Haneda Airport. The airport employee stops the man and is interested in the purpose of his arrival. In response, the man calmly explains that he just returns home to his country. The worker was surprised to learn that the man traveled around the world. In response, he explained that he served in the army, and because of this, he had to travel a lot of different countries. In addition, he has British citizenship and is a soldier of Britain. After checking, he returned his passport. The worker greeted the hero Harriet Tager, wished him a good day. Garrett thanked in response. The hero is still worried about border control. He remembers how much he had to do by orders of the military. Therefore, he is not at all surprised when the officer begins to be interested in him. The first thing he did when he came to Japan was a cup of tea. This habit has emerged from the age of 16 when he was sent to the British Army. Putting a cup on the table, the man seemed to be watching him. He came to the cafe at the edge of the airport to finally find out who was watching him. While heading here, he looked carefully at everyone who was around, and only one of them got so far away. The hero knows who it is, because this man probably has a connection with his past in SIS. However, he is confident in another. This pursuer is set to take his life. SAS is a special unit of the British Armed Forces, which is considered the best in the world. His fighters are most difficult to select and receive extremely high-quality training. When he served in the army, for many years he was engaged in affairs that remained a secret to others, so he was always forced to hide his face so as not to disrupt any task. He never learned that his civilian colleague had taken place when he posted their joint photo on Instagram. Although he closed the hero's face in the picture, he was clearly visible in the window displaying. This is how he lost his job in SAS. Time T is over. Who is he? Too many people seek to decide with him. Perhaps a stranger is looking for the information that our hero possesses, or for his head is assigned a remuneration. But still remains a mystery. Why does he want to deprive himself of life? First of all, Garrett is not sure whether he is the only person who follows him. Usually they keep piles, sit on the tail, and act in the group. Perhaps one of them is now hiding and watching the main character. It can be in the crowd or watching the cameras somewhere from afar. But the man decides to act. The hero greeted everyone loudly and confessed that he had never been to Tokyo. He wondered where you can take a good picture here. The man showed him some interesting places, and thanking, the hero moved on a journey. He went around almost all the places where his teammate could follow him, but it seems that no one nearby. He purchased everything he needed. It was necessary to check the last hiding place. If he is truly lonely, he cannot afford to lose the hero out of sight. Judging by his behavior, he is a beginner in this case, so he will definitely rush after him immediately. Garrett will lure him to an abandoned area behind the airport. He cannot allow ordinary people to be involved in it. Now, he has a goal in his hands. Hiding in the toilet, the man took his place. The stranger was in a hurry, afraid of losing him from the field of view, because he understood this feeling perfectly. But the man did not lose vigilance. After getting the flashlight, he sharply illuminated the stranger directly into his eyes, trying to blind him. After that, he took something like a stick. But in fact it was just a rolled magazine. CCQ is a fighting style for narrow, closed spaces, the true pride of its special unit. Thanks to this technique, even a regular flashlight turns into a formidable weapon, and the light of his special model of the lantern is so bright that he can easily blind the enemy. If there is no weapon at hand, the hero can make it himself. This is exactly what he learned in the SAS special unit, because sometimes the mission must be fulfilled, using only what you will find. The protagonist sharply stopped by the store, but the stranger cleverly evaded while taking off his cloak. The hero removed the hood from his pursuer, and he was waiting for an unexpected discovery. It was not a man, but a creature with a man's body, but with a bird's head. This creature rejected the hero so far and strong that even the wall of the toilet cab was scattered from the impact, notwithstanding the strength and weight of his body. The hero drew attention to this power. He could not understand where the man in Crook's mask came from such incredible abilities. He would not want to deprive someone of his life, but he will regret that he did not dare to. The hero approached, hit the solar plexus, and immediately bent the enemy, throwing him forward. He fell on the floor with a loud roar. He coughed. It's all over. Finally, Garrett could take off his stupid mask, but she did not succumb. Suddenly, a shadow appeared behind. The hero turned. He suggested that it was a partner of that creature. The man still did not understand what was going on, so he carefully checked every detail. How did he find himself here? The stranger he had just won suddenly stood up and immediately threw a mysterious lunge. A weapon suddenly appeared in the hands of a sworded. The man could not understand how it happened. The only thing he was aware, he got into a real mess. There is a tense confrontation between Harriet and strangers. The man realizes that there is almost no space for escape. He completely came under their control. Suddenly under his feet a strange shining circle caught fire. Strangers are amazed to the heart. The hero looks around, not understanding what is happening. The circle has acquired more and more patterns. There seemed to be something unclean here. The hero thought that it was probably an earthquake, and in the next moment she suddenly began to fall somewhere. Is the building collapse? He was in a kind of space. Everything around glowed. Such an impression that he is inside something and at frantic speed is swept through it. But does he really sleep at this moment? Suddenly he was in the water. Apparently, he fell directly into the sewer. Turning on the flashlight, he began to look around carefully. At the wall, his gaze stopped on something unusual. It was a column, all covered with moss with mysterious inscriptions. It did not resemble the sewer element. At first glance, these were ruins. But what do they really hide? One of the path was a litter. The man could not understand why there was no trap or a failure where he could have failed. Then his attention was drawn to his own poncho. Probably it fell out of his backpack. He may find some other things nearby. Suddenly, he noticed a man and suggested that he could be injured. It was a girl lying in the water among the debris. She started coughing. Garrett approached her, asked her well-being, and decided to look at the wounds. First of all, he checked her head, because when the brain is damaged, a person would not be able to move properly. Fortunately, there were no serious injuries, only a small ghoul. The pupils respond to light, so the brain is not damaged, except for a slight shake. He carefully took it under the armpits and pulled it out, trying not to touch possible fractures. She had to be taken out as soon as possible so that she would not be overgraded. Her face became pale and her lips have become purple. Things go bad, it is necessary to warm it up. And suddenly he paid attention to the girl's clothes. Her clothes looked strange for him. The fabric was not like the usual one that could be found in shops. Everything around looked strange. Is it really the ruins of something once existing? Or maybe all this collapsed here after the earthquake? But it does not notice any electrical wires or plastic things. Suddenly the girl woke up. Seeing that her clothes were unbuttoned, she was surprised. The man quickly realized that she had misunderstood everything. He was in a hurry to explain that her clothes were even when he found it. The girl answered something, but the young man could not understand her words. The man does not understand anything, and the girl is not even able to stand up for herself. You should find a way to understand it. He began to greet her different languages, every time trying to surprise her with something new. The girl started talking again. Among her words, the word earth flashed. She wondered if he was really God, and whether he arrived from the earth. The man clarified what she means. Her eyes shone with a bright fire. She told everything, remembering that he was from the earth and that he was Marabito, without linking the phrases. The hero never understood why she was so happy. Suddenly, the girl asked him to wait a little and got a feathers. She begins to tickle the man by his nose and strictly warns him not to move. He sneezed, and a bird suddenly jumped out of his nose, grabbed a feathery, and without spending time, disappeared in the sky. The girl was all in the mucus that flowed from the nose of the man. Harriet asked her that she had done, and that it was like a bird. The girl replied that it was a Babylonian bird. At first, the man was confused by hearing about the Babylonian bird, but later realized that they still understood each other. The girl also confirmed this, explaining that these birds would roll their nests in the heads of people from the ground, so they can no longer understand the interlocutor. She could not imagine that the day would come when she would need a feathery she was inherited from the great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. The man was still convinced that the bird, rushing out of Nomo, spoiled his hairstyle. For the last few years, he has not felt such confusion. Garrett asked the girl if she heard it was some strange sound. Suddenly, a creature with a saber and horns jumped on them. The man cleverly evaded and stepped on the hand in which there was a weapon. This creature was reminiscent of a deer, but how did he succeed so high? A fight was bundled between them. The girl shouted loudly that they were a demon, a creature from a race that feeds on people. Warriors with horns on their heads could jump incredibly high. She asked the hero to be careful. The demon rushed to the attack, waved his sword, and almost wounded the hero. The hero did not waste any moment. He jumped forward and grabbed the deer firmly by the horns. Then he pushed away from the ground and flew up. He was strongly twisting the creature's head, and she fell to the ground with a roar. Garrett saw the strong muscles of the demon. Despite the bizarre, it was indeed the head of the head. Suddenly, the girl screamed, warning about the danger behind herself. Another warrior with a deer head appeared, armed with a spear. The man rushed forward, grabbed the creatures, and, skillfully using them in favor, began to contradict. He noticed her wonderful reflexes. This girl seemed much more skillful. It could have turned out to be a problem. Although he wanted to give her the opportunity to escape, that path was already blocked. Somewhere in the water, there is a weapon. What to do next? The girl wondered if he could do something in such a situation. If she really was in the place she thought about, then a sword that had been given a traveler had to be hidden somewhere nearby. The deer rushed at the hero again, armed with a spear, and began to attack him with new force. The man understood the tactics of this creature well, to strike and retreat immediately. The girl called the alien, but he advised her to hide because it was dangerous here. She agreed, but before that, she suggested to take advantage of this situation. There was a flint rifle in the guy's hands. He wanted to know where she came from, but now the main thing for him is to have at least some weapons. The flint gun is a really good thing. If you charge it in advance, you can shoot at any time. Although he has never held such a rare weapon, the gun seems strange to him. The hero made a shot, and his bullet hit his head. The creature rose to the sky and flew, and the girl exclaimed enthusiastically that it was incredibly cool. She was told that people with special abilities are among the aliens. Her name is Mizu. She could not fall asleep again. The man who was nearby was called Taiga. The girl wondered the second name. Taiga was surprised, and replied that there was no such thing on the earth. He began to ask where he got, because it was definitely not the earth. The museum only confirmed his assumption. People who live in this world call it a million labyrinths. All this world is imbued with mazes. There are insidious traps, formidable monster and ancient magic that does not know mercy here everywhere. The man believed that the service during the flight was so terrible that he escaped from this reality into the arms of nightmares. I would like to believe it. Taiga asks whether a safe place to go, but he replies that there is a place, but she does not remember exactly where it is. However, she notes that the threshold of her home from above, directly above them. She also found several ammunition and suggested that her husband take them. The man asked what happened to her house. The girl replied that it was all because of the dungeon storm. The hero became interested and began to ask what it was. The hero did not even have time to ask what it was, as a storm in the dungeon began. Praxis appeared on the ceiling. Tiger immediately realized that everything was about to collapse, and the head rushed to the girl. He wrapped in his clothes tightly, closing even more than needed. The muse blushed, seeing such an unexpected gesture. In the next moment, the ceiling with a grunt collapsed. The man asked how the girl feels. She thanked him for salvation and apologized for her harsh words at the beginning of their meeting. The tiger advised the girl to start moving while the monster still watches them through her camera. Everything around again shook. Mizuko asked him to wait another minute. She got something from the bag and said it was impossible to do without it. These were glasses. Her vision was weak. When she put on her glasses, Taiga finally struck her. But his appearance disappointed her. She said that he was not the way she was described. In response, the man noted that he was an elderly person and suggested that the road go. Taiga said that her house had fallen, and now she has nowhere to live. She shrugged. They say, it happens. But today everything shakes particularly. The man asked, interested in what different the storm in the dungeon from a real earthquake. Mizuko said that on Earth such storms are called earthquakes. Although she drove Babblebird, in her words there were still mysterious expressions. This aroused great curiosity, and she decided to record everything. Taking a steel pen, she began to write on the slate board. Her hands trembled. The man noted that he had to notice it before. He threw her on the shoulders of his coat. He explained that the main part of the heat comes out through the head and neck, so it would be the best option for her. The girl thanked him and confessed that she did not feel her feet and could not walk. The protagonist was impressed with her words. Reducing body temperature by only 2 degrees can lead to hypothermia. Similar symptoms were manifested in my Mizuho. It was very cold, and it was only due to adrenaline tide. The man was carrying a girl on her back. She apologized that she was constantly in need of help. However, he reassured her, saying not to worry. Then Taiga asked not to think about it yet, and to tell you better where she came from. It lives near the 5th support where the power of the Roman Empire holds. Once upon a time there was a giant state that everyone knew as the United States of Rome. I suspect that the empire got its name because of it. By that time, she roamed with despair and trading caravans. And it was then that she got a gun for the first time. Taiga wondered what she was doing now. The girl replied that she became a narrator. It passes to people old stories and songs that have survived from generation to generation. Taiga noticed her voice came to life. Obviously, she likes to communicate. The hero asked her to talk about local monuments. She replied that she did not know if there is something behind this wall, how to get there, and how many days it can take. After all, in this world, through the wall of the family, they divorce. He heard the hero to think that 1,000,000 labyrinths are actually the only huge mechanism. The hero felt what the wind thought. Mizuho thought that they were probably already approaching the exit. They went to a huge hall. From surprise, their mouths opened on their own. Everything was lying in ruins. The girl did not understand how that could happen. The tiger asked if everything should be that way. She confidently replied that no. She had never seen such vast open spaces before. It seemed as if all the dungeons were just erased from the face of the earth. She drew attention to the statue. In the heart of the main square stood the figure of His Royal Majesty. In other words, half of the square is gone. The museum hopes that the boys are holding on and everything is fine. Taiga understands. They will have to climb up. Do they still have strength? He was not sure whether she would find help there, but there was no other way out. The hero carefully lowers the girl to the ground and asks if she can go alone. Then he suggests to see what happened to others. They walked the narrow path that remained after the construction. The girl said that it was very high here. Taiga reassured her. They say, it is not necessary to worry. The main thing is to go slowly. The man helped the girl overcome obstacles. Every time they took their hands to go through the difficulties that the girl's cheeks were red. Mizuko told that the taiga always behaved very courageously and calmly, and he is a real hero. Even strangers saves without any hesitation. Taiga confessed that everything is alien and incomprehensible here for him. If it weren't for her, he probably would have died for a long time. So now they are in calculation. The Mizu smiled and said that if he did not understand something, she could always ask. The hero thought that Mizuho was a really good girl. She could be so frightened that she could not step, but that didn't happen. And suddenly the main character noticed something. They went somewhere. Before them is a forest filled with light right in the middle of the room. The girl immediately noticed the terrible destruction around. It's like a star. Mizuko explains that the real stars once shone in the sky, but now all the sky and even they are hidden in the mazes that have closed everything. The hero steps forward, wanting to tell about his star. In short, there's nothing external in 1,000,000 labyrinths. Everything that exists is only inside the rooms. If it were not possible to collapse, this space would be completely closed, and an unknown, mysterious place would be hidden behind the wall. Some rooms are interconnected by many transitions. He does not understand where they lead and how they are related. No wonder this area was called a maze. They finally got to the statue. They had to climb up. But suddenly, something began to collapse again. The man closed the girl, protecting her from danger. The road collapsed. Someone called them up the stairs. Mizuko immediately recognized this voice. It was Padasara-san. The man also recognized the girl and asked how she feels. Padasar told his friends that Mizuko had returned. She sincerely apologized to the boys for making them worry, and then rapidly ran behind the rope. Tiger noted that the girl made a lot of effort. The hero was also lifted to his feet. The man confessed that he was a little awkward because they saved him. At that time, Pudasarasana noted that they were in fact rescued by Mizuho. This elderly man was called Fry Snack Potsad. He was the owner of the hotel. However, now this hotel no longer exists. The hero introduced himself and explained that he has no name because he is originally from distant lands. Suddenly he noticed people around. They had tails and ears, so he even rubbed his eyes without believing. Potasser asked what had happened. He replied that it is probably just an imagination after a trauma, and he was released. Mizuku wondered the state of His Royal Majesty and prominent persons in the country. This issue immediately gave the sadness. Everyone fell silent and rushed. Only Skasar decided to break the silence and spoke. He replied that the truth was that the royal yard was destroyed. His Majesty, along with the creators of the earth, disappeared into the storm of the storm. Everyone turned his views on the statue of the bishop. Someone bowed their head with sadness, and someone was silent with tears. Their fifth support, which supported the power of the Roman Empire, fell. The girl stood in a confusion. not knowing what to do next. Panic was engulfed. They have neither fields nor livestock. Hunger seemed inevitable. And if the monster appears, what then? They will just be eaten, and this will be over. But Potisar reassured everyone, advised not to despair. She believed that if you rallies, they would definitely be able to survive together. The hero believed that the creators of this land were extremely important people. Mitsuko explains that they stand face to face with the darkness of the dungeon, winning the monsters. These are those people who build a new kingdom. That is why they became rays of hope for everyone. Not everyone withstood this trial, and many lost everyone who loved. The inhabitants began to quarrel with each other as suddenly the earth under their feet shuddered. People engulfed panic when the thunderstorms began again. Taiga shouted to everyone so that no one was moving until the shocks were subside, and ordered everyone to bend and protect their heads. Everything around began to collapse. The hero noted that the plane leans and the girl needs to stay well. Is everything really returning to the horizontal position? However, this was not true. The whole breakdown suddenly shuddered, but the playground stopped shaking. Just in the eyes began to move the Earth's canvas, cutting the maze through. Can such a world really exist? The hero realizes that only chaos and trouble dominates. Seeing a terrible monster, Tiger immediately realized. He got into a completely different world. He stated that he could no longer decide to surrender. He acknowledges that it is authenticity. This is what life looks like among a million labyrinths. Suddenly there were many monsters who began to attack people. The target still does not understand how he found himself here, and suddenly noticed two familiar figures. Two strangers, who had already encountered in his world, stood in front of him. He understood that in spite of everything, they also belonged to this world. They brought him with them, but why? What do they want from him? He shouted, turning to them, trying to find out their goal. However, in response, he heard nothing. The earth under it suddenly began to crumble and fail. The hero cannot understand who he really is. Suddenly, the avalanche stopped. People could not understand what had happened. Is salvation really possible? The tiger advised to find and check those who were nearby. The man reached the very edge of the building and realized that things were quite bad. He called Spring to himself. People around trust him even more than a hero. The old man asked what happened. The hero suggested to evacuate everyone as soon as possible. The old man muttered something under his nose. Taiga wondered why he was so worried about the interference of a stranger, and why he is saying that he was not a hero. The old man replied that all was well, and recalled that it was this hero who saved everyone. The man did not understand how such could happen. Potasser noted that he likes the hero. He promised to treat him with a drink, addressing him as a Taigason, who has no second name. In response, the hero said that alcohol is not bad, but he values tea more. The tiger finally understands that these two know something exactly, maybe even have a way to return to the old world. All people gathered in one place. All were goals and unharmed. Tiga noted that it was cold here, so he decided to light a fire. Grandpa appealed to others to lend someone's sweater. The hero noticed that Mizuka had frozen and realized that it was an alarm. The tiger rotates to the Potsar and asks him to light a fire, and he is going to return to the square to find the melting materials. He asks if it is not too dangerous, because the area can collapse at any time. The hero looks at the statue and says there is no other way out. In addition, someone else can ahead. The man passed from the room to the room, collecting all the necessary things. It seemed to him that it was very tight here. How can this be called home? The toilet is just a bucket right in the room, and they divided the kitchen by everyone. Suddenly the young man heard someone who asked if there was someone here. He immediately realized that this voice was heard from the door. The girl at the door confesses that she was trembling and she is interested in what happened. Seeing the guy, she warns that it is dangerous now and asks him to release her. Tiger explained that it was not a prison. When asked what she did, the girl confessed she committed a small theft. The girl asked the boy who he was. His face was completely unfamiliar. He had a serious look and looked as if used to risk life, or even trade in other people's destinies. The tiger believed that she was attentive but did not look dangerous, so he decided to stay nearby. He wondered where the keys are. She replied that they hang on the wall to the right of it. However, unfortunately, there was no wall on the right. It was at this point that the hero noticed a humanoid creature. Sturky, with pointed ears and nose. The girl exclaimed it was a demon. Perhaps the scout. Others should be somewhere near. The man recalled that demons were cannibals. We cannot let him tell our relatives. It should be eliminated. The hero made a shot and hit the target. The demon was defeated. He realized that his opponent was hiding somewhere nearby. It's bad. It takes 30 seconds to recharge these weapons. Pursuing him would be just foolish now. The girl asked if he still did not try to catch up. He replied that he couldn't do it. The key cannot be reached. Suddenly the building leaned and everything began to collapse. The girl thought that apparently the key fell somewhere. The hero dropped on his knee and got a pin out of his sneakers. He reported that he would open the castle now. The girl wondered if he could unlock the castles. The guy replied that he had learned at work. The stranger realized that he was not as simple as it seemed at first. She hinted that he probably also a robber. But he asked her not to compare him with the villains. The hero quickly unlocked the castle and they left this place hurriedly. On the way, the girl began to assume who the uncle really was. The man threw her bag and suggested helping with a burden. She gladly agreed to pull the stolen, but immediately set the condition. She wanted to get her part of the prey. The hero did not deny and appealed to her proposal. The girl was delighted and they easily agreed. But suddenly everything around came down. The building fell. They are saved. However, a terrible storm rages around. The darkness absorbs everything around, and it is not at all visible how such a deep failure appeared. The tiger warned the girl to be careful. The edges here can be very fragile. She noted that she reacted unusual, in a special way. After that, the girl asked the boy to tell about herself. He named his name and asked her name. Her name is Trody, and she is a pathetic thief. Taiga couldn't stop thinking about this little demon. He became wondering how likely it would come not to one, but bring someone else. Thorable replied to this. They also need to eat, and for demons, people are food. When demons gather in the crowd, it becomes really difficult. Among them are cunning and giants, and together, they attack as a real army. However, if you have time to escape immediately, they may not even notice your disappearance. The man said that the inhabitants of her country are hiding here from danger. Now they cannot get out of here and remain locked in this place. The hero suggested that she go to them. She said in response that they had thrown her behind the lattice, so it was not an option at all. The only thing she wanted was to regain the part that Taiga promised to her. She opened a bag, and inside she saw the fragments of a tree, a glass, some lid, and a like junk. Trody immediately called it garbage. Suddenly, someone called the hero. It was Potsar. He asked Take if he was fine with him. Suddenly they heard a terrible roar. Take replied that everything was well with him, although the area suddenly collapsed. The man then asked if there was someone else. The hero replied that in any case he collected things to ignite fire. After that, he wondered that with the campfire. The old man was killed because he underestimated this man. Usually in such cases, everyone called the sorcerer to light the fire. They are used to a carefree and comfortable life. In this world, no doubt there was some special infrastructure. The hero clearly voiced his plan of action and called Trody for help. At this point, the girl hid behind the wreckage of the destroyed wall. People were surprised to see her alive and learned that he had released her. Taiga said that she had attracted her here with him and wondered why he had not passed it down to her. People had already begun to be indignant, but someone expressed the opinion that in their position it was the right decision. He will not create any problems, but on the contrary, he will need to take care of it. The man asked in Trot whether she could be trusted. She agreed, because she still had nowhere to go. She suggested that you ignite the campfire with a chair. The characters replied that they first need to find a suitable place for this. They went down to the ancient temple, which once served as a place for assembly. The man explained that it was a lowland, and if we approach it, she would protect us from the wind. And the stones around, which has already absorbed the daytime heat, will store it longer, so it will be more comfortable here. Everything that they brought will become fuel. All you have to do is distribute it. Meanwhile, the hero began to prepare a place for the fire. He pulled the hair bundle and, using a special device for cutting the spark, set it on fire. Everything flashed the flames. The tiger explains that the flame will gradually ignite. The fire is born of heat. He asks not to use hard-to-do or too big things. Podsar realized why the fabric was burning so well. The hero explained that more fuel was needed. He asked to find out who could take the right things. When the firewood is laid out, it is important to consider how the air will pass. But if there is little fuel, air access, on the contrary, should be restricted. Trody brought everything he gave to him. Who could give? Podsar said that he saw a Vera, which was, well, fat, and suggested to melt the fat from him. At the same time, he explained that this fat has long been used to lubricate musical instruments. Just like rosin, Potisar noted that if you rub the wood with bacon, it will burn better. And the girls in the village have wigs. The hero burned the campfire. He said that the case is done. Now you need to help Mizuko. Suddenly, he was called and reported that something strange happens with Mizuko. She had incomprehensible symptoms. It is so exhausted that it no longer responds to anything. The guy tried to wake her up, but her body was icy to the touch. This is the last stage of hypothermia. Trade asked the girl. The hero asked Trade to spread the blanket from the baggage in front of the fire. The girl who called herself a taiga recognized the Trade and asked if she was the thief who had penetrated the house of Mizuho. The girl asked all the men to move to the other side. The taiga also was going to leave, but before that he asked Trody for one service. He needed her to strip her Mizucho and lay with her under a blanket. So Taiga hoped that Trody would warm his body with his body. The girl assured that she could rely on her. She began to take off her clothes, but the hero hurried to stop her, asking not to undress, because in such a cold, it could end with her death. When she removed her clothes, she laid one part with them and covered the other. Trody said she could go to bed. He replied that if she wanted to rest, it is better to rest. However, the girl has already fallen asleep. Taigen noticed that they were reminiscent of young children. The woman noted that Trody was not as bad as she thought at first. The protagonist heard that she was considered a thief, although the victim was not a little. She explained that Trody was detained before she stole something. Now guys can be told that they can return. The man decided to ask the girl to distribute the rest of the blanket to those who need it. She agreed and advised him to relax too, but he had another matter. Taiga loudly called on everyone who was not busy with anything to come together. He explained that there are several things to do. The first of them is to organize a water supply. He advised them to go to the nearest river and collect water. But be sure to get used to boil the water. If you drink it just like that, further on duty on guard. Since monsters are found in the dungeons, he wants people to take turns guarding the places that come out. One of the men asked what to do if they were attacked, because they had only knives at their disposal. The hero replied that if they did not cope, you need to extinguish the fire and hide. To do this, it was necessary to decide in advance where to hide in order to act quickly. The man himself went to look at the seat for the guard. He trusted the Potsuru. He said that he cooked soup from fat and suggested that the hero first taste. The hero thanked, but replied that first it was necessary to feed sick and children. The tape and others agreed with him. The man left sideways and asked Yak to take care of Mizuho. Suddenly, Mizuho woke up. She did not understand where she was. Waking up, she noticed near Trody, which slept firmly. Sha thought that she would definitely thank her, because Trody warmed her with her warmth all this time. The girl wondered how much she fell. She was told that it took a long time. The loom stopped timidly, not even noticing that she was completely without clothes. Sayakon calmly explained that her things were completely wet, but they would soon dry. The girl was discontinuing and sparing, asking what happened to her. She decided that Trody wanted to rob her again, and she struck the girl with a swing. Sayakon tried to explain what a misunderstanding had happened, and this time everything was not as it seems. However, she ordered her to silence and threw a steel pen to the thief. The man said that they went around the whole neighborhood, but it was only possible to go here. Taiga replied that everyone relied on him. Rosted tells that he worked as a guard. He even explained the hero to the smallest nuances of this work so that he could rest a little. Tiger believes that he has done everything possible. Now it remains only to hope that nothing will happen. Mizuko noticed the hero. He wondered if she could already get up. She confirmed it and extended him his cup. The hero noticed that the drink is a pleasant aroma. The girl explained, "This is tea, a gift for gratitude from all." The old man reminded the hero that she really wants tea. She noticed how the peasants were in a hurry to grab everything they saw. She went around everyone and was still able to find tea for him. The aroma resembled a nut. The taste was unusual for him, not at all like black tea. However, this drink was surprisingly delicious. The soup was already ready. At this time, Tiger was cleaning the gun, and Mizu sat next to him. He told her that after the first shot, there was no left. She wondered if something really happened. The hero wondered what to say Mizuko. At first, he decided that this conversation should only remain between them, so he suggested that she move away. The girl was surprised to learn about the assembly demon, because now it became clear why enemies know the location of all residents. The hero only shrugged. He still did not notice one, so it is quite possible. He has a few more balls and a little gunpowder. Only 4 shots are enough. But if the demons attack together, it will no longer be possible to cope with them. Now all residents need help, so he does not want to bother them once again. The girl asked about it. If so, why talk about it at all? But later she realized that they no longer have a guide and king who would protect them from chaos and fear. Once alone with the horror of the maze, from which there is no way out, the inhabitants will inevitably split. And yet, they need those who will lay the way in the maze. Brave men, capable of conquering new lands. It was at this point that Trody came to them, and reminded that their soup would soon be cold. Suddenly the girl screamed, seeing a huge room. Mizugo asked why she was so scared. She replied that because of the darkness, she did not even notice how big the room was. The hero remembered that the inhabitants of this world have been accustomed to living in tight rooms since childhood. So an open, spacious place causes them a true horror. If you think, the Mizuho was really brave. And it was at this moment that the girl had an interesting idea. She began to pull the trunk to the light, but she rested with her best. Then she said she got better. The hero sincerely rejoiced in such news. The museum offered to drink some soup to cheer up. Trody asked if it was not rough. To what she answered, "What are you about at all? You wanted to attack me." Somewhere on the sidelines, the children wept bitterly, moving for their mother and dad. The hero understood that these people needed warriors who were able to conquer a new land. The Padasar, who met him with a smile, actually survived the loss. He was taken by the war with his wife and son. All warmly welcomed the hero, although each of them lost a lot. He has already met people with a similar fate in the Middle East and Africa. He is not going to throw those who are used to living in constant fear. But now it's another world. How can he help them here? The girl approached Rustabison, thanked him for his diligent service and guard, and treated with soup. Suddenly, the land under his feet shuddered. Someone unknown rapidly approached them. Then the man ordered the girl to immediately inform Mr. Taigi. His duty was to protect the residents. The girl called Taiga and reported that something was approaching here. Suddenly, a giant demon appeared between the columns and crushed a rust. People rushed. The hero took the gun because he realized the demon appeared here to eat them. He ordered everyone to hide in shelter. Trody he instructed to pass this message to other guards. Mizuho had to take care of the children, and Potasser with Sia Khan was responsible for bringing everyone to the shelter. Everyone managed to hide, but it only delayed their fate a little. There are only 2 paths left in front of the heroes, either to leave those who cannot escape and try to escape themselves, or to battle with a giant and save everyone. But who knows if ordinary weapons can help against such a monster? The hero aimed at him a gun and pressed on the descent. The bullet hit the head directly. He did not even have time to realize. However, the bullet only affected the bullet, so he will have to work. Trody decided to go to the help of the hero. It takes a little time to recharge your weapon. Suddenly he noticed a scout he had missed earlier. It was he who brought here the main. So, what do they do next? It seems that the gun will no longer help, and the hero no longer wants victims, and goes to the girl for help. She understands that the guy came up with something. She was interested in it. She is ready to give him a hand for cooperation. She called the demon and ordered him to follow her quickly. He tried to grab the girl but missed. She cleverly bounced sideways. However, in his words, everything seemed quite simple. It was only necessary to lure the monster to the cliff. The girl, meanwhile, was constantly evading the monster's attacks. She laughed and challenged the monster, suggested to try to catch her. Taiga believes that she deserves praise. She really distracted attention. The basic idea of their plan is to act when the demon does not expect it at all. Here, you need to hit exactly the weak place from the first time. To do this, you will take more powder and charge the gun with a double ball. This is a way of charging a flint gun of the Shingoki era that allows you to achieve a shot of a shot. Although the load on the gun is increasing, instead, weapons receive extraordinary, devastating power. The abyss was already nearby. There were almost no ways to escape in trot. The girl looked around and looked at the boy. The giant will try to grab her and rush forward. It is at this moment that she has a single chance. And so everything happened. The man began to act. There was no way back. Iran was confidently moving towards his goal. It is this goal that gives power to the whole huge body. It is about allelotendon itself. The tiger attacked. 2 lead balls sewed the skin, muscles, and Achilles tendons, which was already tense after the jerk, tearing it on the flap. Trody shouted happily that the hero had coped with the task. Now it was only necessary to wait for the monster to finally disappear into the abyss. However, the monster was firmly in the column. Suddenly he grabbed Trody, and the protagonist shouted her name loudly. The demon pushed the hero with force. He immediately realized the trophy was in the legs of the enemy. What to do now? The girl screams desperately to the boy to run away because the monster will no longer retreat. She begged him to flee with everyone, while the monster tried to eat it. The taiga grabbed a dagger. He wondered, will it be able to punch his body? Will it get to the most vulnerable place? He did not answer these questions. However, he has no choice. The hero strongly embarks on his weapon into the body of the monster just in the face. The man plunged the dagger as deep as he could. He will never leave his friends in trouble, and at this moment the hero causes the enemy a deep blow. From the wound on the neck, the monster slammed the stream of blood, and his fingers weakened, so Trody finally escaped from his grip. He began to crush everything around. Trody, who was already standing with the boy, was surprised to see that the monster could still move after such a big blood loss. However, the hero rejects this statement. He says that with such a foot will not work. And in fact, the demon began to fall with a break. Trody rejoiced that he finally managed to fall, and now the victory belongs to them. She understands that taiga is not as simple as it seemed at first glance. People came out of the shelter and began to shout the names of Taiga and the Trips. They were amazed that this too managed to defeat the giant. Potasar sadly says that of course she is sorry for rusting. Without them, two of them would definitely become someone's prey. Mizuko adds that all remained alive only thanks to the taiga. Thanks to his mind and courage, they were able to survive. Only taiga is able to show them the right path. The girl turned to the taiga with an unexpected offer. She invited him to become their king. People began to ask him for help. They believed that only he was able to save them. He asked them not to joke. Mizuko acknowledges that they may be too persistent, but he still asks him to save them again. This time as a king, as a land's conqueror. The Trips agrees to proclaim the taiga with the king, because it was he who skillfully distributed the tasks between them. The hero said that he had previously served in the army, so he would not get a king. It will definitely end badly. On this, Trody noted that, worse than now, it would definitely not be. Seeing the boy's harsh look, she told him not to look at her so much. Taiga realizes that everyone is serious, but asking a stranger to become a king is too much. Shradgi said that if Taiga became the king, she will become the owner of this land. Mizuko supported her. Though in the battles she is not the strongest, but she is confident in the maze. Both promised to support him. The man remembers the words of Mizuko. Land conquerors are rays of hope. They are ready to sacrifice their lives for the sake of others. These two are fine for everything. If he has the power to save someone, why not do it? The hero nodded, agreeing on this decision, but he agreed to become a representative of the king. This will continue until someone is more worthy of this role. That is, it will become one of the governors. So, as a representative of the king, he needs to come up with a name for the state. In the head is empty. Nothing original comes to mind. He tries to remember something familiar, something close to the heart. In the end, he proposes to call Camp Bravo. The hero thought about the wary look of the interlocutor. It seems that they will now ask questions about the location of the Alpha Group. Mizuho wondered the opinion of others. They answered that the idea sounds good. If you add the word big at the beginning, an even more solemn name will come out. From that moment, Mizuho announced the founding of the great kingdom of Camp Bravo. She solemnly congratulated the King Tai. The former soldier became a monarch in a new world. It does not like him at all, and the authorities do not attract him. However, he cannot leave the estate either. That's really complicated in his character. From now on, they organized their first meeting at a round table in the great kingdom of Camp Bravo. However, there were two problems at once. The first, the stock of firewood is almost exhausted. They will not be enough even this night. The second is that there is very little food. To provide all 29 people is becoming more difficult. Help to wait for nowhere. They will have to save themselves on their own, otherwise death awaits them. Mizuho supported the taiga and noted that it was because of this that they would have to visit Le Prince. The girl noted that Tigo was Marabito, and he did not have any idea what they were talking about. Trody explains that if you want to get resources from endless labyrinths, you will have to explore many rooms. One room hides a thick forest. The other is full of water. There is also a room where ores are hidden. There will be a place with the ground and shimmering stars. There is a piece where you can plow the field. In water rooms, even fish swim. The hero noticed that each room had his own special resources. As a stranger in this place, he understood that so much was still all unknown around. He told everyone who belongs to Marabito. But no one was surprised. Everyone remained indifferent. Then the tracks paid attention to everyone to the fact that this area and the place where they are now, and are their refuge. Here's a royal palace in front of them. This is their new royal residence. Although there is not even a throne in this room, Mizuko confirmed. It was from here that their kingdom begins. Trody suggested returning to the original plan. The palace is surrounded by a rock, a wall, and a river on 3 sides. According to him, it is possible to get to the maze only from the north. It was by this passage that the giant demon. Now only after passing through it, they will be able to start exploring the maze. Now the hero realized that the conquerors of the land are in fact laying the way in the maze. Everything became clear. It is time to choose those who are ready to go deep into the mysterious maze. Taiga says that there are giant demons and creatures with deer heads. He does not want to take them with him. Trody replies that he understands his fears, but someone has to wear a load, and this requires hands. Yes, it's risky, but there is no other choice. Right? The hero suggested to go ahead and protect everyone else, but the girls were immediately denied because he did not know the maze at all. They decided that it was better to choose one of those who already visited these confusing passages. The hero from the experience realized that it was worth listening to the advice of the local, although it was still a little worried. The minister Mizuho will decide who will go on resource production, and the tracks, as a trusted taiga person, collect all the necessary things for this expedition. While they tried to determine who was the hero, for some reason, he began to call him Ninja. This world is really difficult to understand. He told the girls that when they finish their business, he would have to do something else before they leave. Mizuko wondered what he was in mind. The hero ordered everyone to lie on the floor. He warned that if you do it wrong, you could easily injure. Therefore, he urged everyone to study movements first, and then jump and lie down quickly. He called him dissatisfied with the devil coach. And Mizuho sighed and confessed that she could no longer stand. She is not very skilled in this. Tiger explained that they were heading to the maze. It would be unfortunate if he had suffered for no reason. Trody promised to protect the Mizucho from the back. Hearing this, Mizuko was only even more worried. The hero remembered how he once taught recruits in the army. He very much wants to return to the ground, but because of many constant events he completely forgot to ask. But Mizuko knows something. So the man called the girl to talk. Taiga wondered if there was a Malabit, except for himself. But no one was especially surprised to learn that he was the only one. The girl agreed and added that most likely it was due to the fact that he knew nothing about the maze. She believes that it is unlikely that anyone has met Mahabito in real life, but at the same time they seem to them that they are really very close. After all, they have heard many stories about Enmira. She is a local fairy tale that often tells these stories to children here. From ancient times, many different stories have been walking. They talk about those who have gained wealth, about love with the queens, but most of the terrible tragedies, about those who died in the maze. Suddenly she laughed and confessed that she joked, so he should not worry. They would stay with him. Then the hero wondered if there were stories about returning to the old world. The girl replied that there was such a story, but did not say much about it. At this point, Mizuko remembered that she had to hurry, and began to wake up the tracts. The hero replied that he was such a strong exile. The girl noted that there are almost no such stories. There is only one, where he finds his place among a million labyrinths and lives happily. Mizuko protected him. She would not lie. It seems that Marabito's stories have no place to be a happy finale. The only thing left is these two that can know something. Now they need to concentrate on the task, because no one knows what awaits. They have a dagger than an axe for cutting trees and only one ball. Will he be able to return everyone home and intact? The hero wondered if everything was ready. Trody assured that you could not worry. The giant demon would no longer appear. In the air, the smell of blood from the demon, which has recently won Tiga, is still felt. So the other demon is unlikely to dare to come out of fear. Suddenly, Trody noticed something carved on the pillar. Mizuko became interesting, and she decided to look closer. The card is already a little rubbed, and not everything can be seen. Indeed, you can see something like a temple here, but there is no elevator. Maybe this column is something like an elevator. The tiger replied that it didn't matter. Trody also noted that Mizuko is more suitable for the role of a scientist than a narrator. Some of them turned to a man at this moment. Skazer called the hero and said that everyone put hopes for him. Trody mentioned that it was the first campaign in the history of their kingdom, so he had to proclaim the words before departure. The hero announced that they would now go to a dangerous maze to get food and resources. Everyone hopes to return without injuries. The man noticed how carefully others listened to him. They really trust him. Despite the fact that he was only a demonstrative position of the king's representative, to him, a foreigner, they treated surprisingly hospitably. It was impossible to afford unnecessary words. After all, as a soldier, he had a special task, and in his unit, only one motto prevailed. It is those who dare to take risks that can overcome their fears, become stronger, and win. For them, it is the only way to victory and survival. He solemnly promises the people of the Great Kingdom Camp Bravo, which will protect them from any threat that will appear on their way. People began to express the admiration of the kingdom and representative of the king. The hero turned to the people who walked next to him. 6 satellites looked noticeably concerned, and he saw it well. The museum reassures everyone, they say. It is not necessary to worry, because with them, Taiga is a legendary giant fighter of demons. One of the men indicates that they may already rely on him. Labor, meanwhile, reminds that time to go, and hopes everything to go without adventure. It's time to go. The first battle is already waiting for them. An enemy who won whole land. Taiga looks at the girls with hope and says he hopes for their support. Girls confidently nod and confirm their willingness to help. The hero was convinced that only stone walls and aisles would be expected inside the maze, but something was wrong in this place. How did you finally create this maze? Suddenly, the man who walked in front ordered everyone to stop. Trody noticed something strange on the route. The messenger rushed forward. The whole detachment trusted Trody intelligence, because they were instructed to monitor the safety of the way. The hero wondered what they found. The girl replied that someone was next. There were many excrement on the ground. The hero ordered 6 to stay here, and with Mizuko, he decided to go and find out to whom these traces belonged. They approached Trody, and she called them closer, but asked not to make noise. Pointing to excrement, Trody said she found them here. Mizuko immediately recognized that it was the remnants of the bat, but the girl paid their attention further, suggested to look even more closely. There was a lot of litter around, but there were no mice nearby. The heroes mentioned that on Earth, the afternoon of bats can tolerate dangerous diseases. This world was the same. Mizuko confirmed that if you touch these litters, you can get sick. Taiga advised everyone to cover his nose and mouth with a cloth until they check whether it is safe here. The tradition went with him, and Mizuko remained. The girl was very dissatisfied. She is also able to fight. The hero understands this perfectly, and in his soul was the thought, what if everyone dies? Therefore he asks her to protect those 6 standing behind. Trody said that since Misoa is a minister, she can entrust her battles and just watch it to the side to evaluate how skillful it is in battle. The girl only sighed back. Large bats. The soul of the hero felt relieved. It turns out that they also live on the ground. However, it is possible to at least slightly weaken your connection with the earth. It is a pity that it attacked him. They fly silently and extremely fast. The hero confesses to himself. It turned out to be much more difficult than he imagined. Yes, trade tells how to destroy them. She replies, if he can overthrow them, the victory will be behind him. This is the main thing to learn how to blame them. The destruction of large bats is the first challenge for someone who wants to conquer new lands. The girl noticed that the mouse was waiting for a convenient moment on the top and decided to take the initiative. She was the first to go on the offensive. She jumped, pushing from the stone columns. Trody squeezed into the mouse with a dagger in her hand. At first, she cut her first throat, and then said that the second would stay with Tiger. The second mouse is already on him, but he lost her from sight. Its flashlight shines too bright, so it will only blind the eyes of Trody. Suddenly, he hears the mouse stirred. She attacked from her back, but the hero cleverly evaded. He already understood how to win them. These creatures find their prey through echolocation. They produce a shot invisible to humans and orient in space, catching echoes like a radar. Although the echolocation and not to hear the human ear, these creatures themselves give out very loud screams. Their vibration penetrates to the ears. You just have to focus, and you will definitely feel it. The mouse crawled to the man, and he was already preparing to strike, and in a moment he tore the belly of the creature. Try to praise the guy for his wonderful job. She noted that her advice was helpful. In response, he said that she won her before she fell to the ground. But he does not understand why the girl is so confident in herself. Fortunately for two, it was not a whole flock that attacked them. Now they have food. The man remembered how his friends told about his trip to Papua Guinea and shared the impressions of the meat of the bat. If it is well fried, you can eat. But the taste, honestly, is very strange. The third followed by Mizuko. Mizuko, with irony, congratulated her comrades. Trody noticed that the girl was still offended. The hero suggested postponing the conversation for later, and now advised the girl to look more closely. Mizuho came to the body of the mouse and asked what it was. It rot. It may have been a poison needle. The man asked if she knew something about it. She replied that there were monsters who throw needles, sometimes with poison, sometimes not. But those monsters were alive. The girl had to think about this question. Trody said it is in vain now. It is impossible to eat it anymore. It is too dangerous, and you do nothing here. Suddenly, one of the mice moved. The tiger suggested that everyone move on together. The girl followed the 6 other guys. One of the men noted that the road here is only one, but it is still necessary to check. They left the palace on the north side, but went to the east a little further. The hero pointed out that Mizuho was holding a star, which was called a compass. When the study advances, it will be possible to make a real card. And it was at that moment that someone's cry sounded. The hero immediately recognized the voice of the messenger. The girl also confirmed it because she was familiar with Kenrouse's voice. The tracks were kept on the edge of the wall. With one hand, she firmly clung to the speech, and the other kept Conro, preventing her from falling into an infinite abyss, lit with sharp needles. However, her hand began to slip slowly, but Taiga managed to grab her on time. He warned the girl that the lid was already starting to close. The girl apologized before him. She did not even notice it when she came for the first time, and he replied that it was really difficult to see. The hero thought it was a really perfect design. The joints were almost imperceptible. But why was such a thing here? And most importantly, why? We need to try to find something. She urged everyone to move away and press the button, after which the ground under her feet collapsed sharply. The hero decided to leave his mark here. A man cannot understand who created this trap. In addition, it is so complex and cunning. Mizuko says that the maze did not always exist in this world. Only after the catastrophe caused by the maze did the whole world be inside the endless corridors. People say that even now the maze continues to grow. All corridors, rooms, stairs, and everything around appeared after the same disaster. And here Trody noted that the trap with magic is even more insidious and dangerous. In addition, there are mysterious creatures in the maze that are similar to people who constantly rebuild its walls and moves. This is a problem. After all, a trap is a psychological battle that allows you to limit the enemy's actions. To resist this, you need to be able to predict the intentions of the enemy. But there is no such opportunity. They reached the room where the tree grew. Trody was glad to get firewood for the fire. Mizuho noticed Puri, a creature that absorbs blood, and immediately warned everyone to be careful. However, the monster was slow, so it is not especially worthwhile. They should cut down the vidi, and several people will be able to take them to the palace. The food is still left. Suddenly, Trody paid attention to something. The bloodthirsty Puria managed to hunt a toothed boar. True delicacy. It is to celebrate the founding of a new kingdom. Mizuho was surprised when the strong Subone suddenly lost Puerian. Maybe he was injured? The hero wondered if trees could grow here without light. She replied that she had not yet heard of it. And suddenly one of the trees opened his eyes. Mizu shouted that it was not a tree, but a Trent, and called for everyone to move away. The monster began to attack them. The hero shouted, ordering everyone to retreat. But there was nowhere to go. Parrier closed the exit. The draft explained that they were on the territory of Trans. The man shouted to the girl to evade her. She obeyed, though she did not understand what she was demanding. Suddenly, she stumbled and fell. The hero shouted her name loudly. She quickly got up and assured him that everything was fine, nothing wrong. However, Trent has already caught her leg. The girl realized that things were bad and immediately grabbed her dagger. She began to break out, and the hero with anger quietly swayed. Trent began to attack, so the man decided that first you should escape alone. and then think about others. They needed to escape from his attacks as soon as possible, branches flying one after the other in the air. It was even possible to approach. The monster came off and rushed at the heroes. Taiga quickly assessed the situation. Outwardly, the creature looked as if his body was covered by a real bark. It seemed very durable, but there were still long, lasting branches, the things of the bad. However, while it is rooted in the ground, it cannot move. It is necessary to remove the Mizuho from its attack radius. The hero got up and tried to attract the attention of the monster, but it remained indifferent. The man was angry. He shouted to the girl to jump forward. She obeyed, so she managed to avoid a blow. Taiga immediately wondered if everything was fine with her. He was convinced that it was now closest to the monster, but it attacked the girl. Mizuho replied that everything was fine with her. It seems that the danger has not gone further. But behind her was Peruri's bloodsucker, and because of this the girl could not leave the place and was forced to die in one place. Taiga realizes that it is a wild coexistence, but he is sure that everything is sure to have his own weakness. If only Trody was near him. He wanted to help her very much, but there was too much Poria. It was simply impossible to save her without falling into the trap. The rest were also grabbed. He will have to cope with them and the little one alone. If the creature has eyes and mouth, then there should be organs inside. He will need to apply deadly blows to the most vulnerable places, in his mouth and into his eyes. He has already noticed that because of solid skin, his movements are limited. So if he can approach enough, it will be much easier to attack. Taiga was already going to shoot in a monster as it suddenly began to tear its roots out of the ground. The hero could not believe what was happening. At the same time, the muscle noticed that the creature was moving. The situation is complicated. It goes directly from Zugo. If he had a blind area, then it could be sneaked closer, but he hunts in a huge dark room. How does it be guided by such darkness? He did not respond to the cry. He may have no hearing. Only the aroma remained in the air. He caught the smell of his future victim, looked around all his numerous eyes and rushed, first to see the eyes need. His vision was already accustomed to the darkness of the maze, so he noticed even the slightest glare of light or shadow that fell from a subject. This is how he determined where his victim was. It can be concluded that it generally sees badly. But why did the monster attack myself on Mizu? Is it attracted to the smell of young girls? This is the question of smell. The hero understood. The monster passes his side. He tried to avoid the smell of the blood of a demonic giant, which was still holding on it. Although he diligently washed everything, but this smell is not easy to remove. This is especially terrible when the blood is still fresh, and his smell is very sharp, so he felt especially acute. Only one road leads to this room from the palace. The demon visited here, although there are no traces of battle. This is not surprising. Trent knows that he does nothing against the giant, so it is logical that he chose a Mizucho, not him for the attack. So all left to deceive his eyes. The hero shouted loudly to mangacap. It was an extremely bright flashlight that was found on Earth. Taiga shouted to the girl to shrug on him. The girl turned on the flashlight and directed the dazzling light to where it was needed. Trent noticed a huge shadow on the wall and immediately seized his panic, so he decided to attack the enemy. The smell and texture of the fabric only confirmed his worst fears. He was ready to stand up to destroy this danger. As the taiga is approaching, the shadow disappears, and the victory seems achievable to the main character. He rapidly runs to the eye of a trench, and, along with all his determination, drives his weapon there. However, in response, he decided to strike another blow. The hero did not understand what was happening. The man accurately evaded the attacks. He thought the tree was just joking with him. He deliberately beat himself, was ready to get a blow, but did not give up and continued to resist. But how could the hero attack him? One of the attacks almost touched the hero, but he managed to respond in time. However, he no longer left to evade him. Suddenly the attack stopped. The hero did not understand what was happening, and suddenly the axe hit him in one eye. It was a Trody axe. She apologized for a little late. Taiga called her name. She remembered that she promised to protect her back, and sincerely apologized for not justifying her hopes. Mizuho loudly stated that there was no reason to worry. She also knows how to fight, and in a moment she struck the trait stroke directly into the eye. The tractor explained that all the attention of Treno was chained to the taiga, so Mizuko managed to save everyone. The girls noticed that the monster had weakened and suggested that it be overcome, The wise wing again struck the eye. She firmly said that they had no right to lose here. Trody jumped high, trying to reach her eye, and shouted that now on their shoulders, the fate of all people. They can't just stand and watch. She also wounded Trentel in her eye and then ordered Tiger to reach the enemy. The man believed that Mizu was a closed and weak girl, but in fact she was strong. She lived in such a force that she was not afraid to go to battle. In general, this is just that one who is at risk will be sure to win. The hero slowly approached the monster, and then he gave him on his eye, and from there a liquid splashed. Trent began to shake, losing balance, and eventually defeated. The tiger reported that the target was destroyed without any complications. 6 people finally released, and they were happy. The blood-sucked by Pope retreated. It seems that they all managed to repel. The hero was surprised, especially because Mizuko was much younger than he expected. He turned to her and said that she really helped him. In response, she said with a smile, after all, she was used to winning new lands. It seems that the hero finally began to understand that true courage is to fight not only for himself, but also for his people. After all, they are conquerors of new lands. Mizu suggested taking the branches of the sawmill and the trend and back. Trody said she was in anticipation. Is it really so delicious? Mizuha began to describe the taste of meat as possible. In the end, the protagonist confessed that she convinced him. Therefore, the next study should begin with that pass. This time they do not have to use a ball, and what waited ahead remained a mystery. Everyone understood that it is worth preparing. Suddenly, someone voiced the idea that she was interested in everyone. The hero returned to find out more. The monster suddenly noticed a large number of people. A demon with the lion's body appeared in front of the heroes, but Goblin's head. Mizuho said it was a real man to the bones, but a dirty and insidious monster. The creature asked them where the human nest is. The tiger immediately realized that in this world people were standing at the bottom of the food chain. From above, everyone was looking at the terrifying monster and stated that his den was quite nearby. He was all in thick wool, and around his head had a real mane like a lion. Everyone looked at him with alert. Mizuko explained that this monster is called Manthar. She warned everyone to be careful, because this evil creature is distinguished by a remarkable mind. The hero scored, realizing that the monsters did not stop and continued to step, and he had almost no strength to fight. He wondered what to do next. Suddenly, one of the monsters laughed loudly and assured them that it was not necessary to be afraid. In addition, he added that he would not touch them if they sacrificed someone from themselves. More precisely, a young girl. Mizuko was indignant, but the monster was coldly answered that it was not accustomed to tolerating disputes. Its huge height far exceeded everyone around. He told people not to think that someone had the right to do so. He could destroy everyone right now. The protagonist decided that he had nowhere to run. He wondered to resist the monster, and then suddenly suggested that he concludes an agreement with him. The girls were stunned by such a statement. He said that there were already many invaders in their kingdom who encroached on these lands. If you seem, no one will attack. People who gathered together looked at the monster confidently and without fear. He added that if something happens to them, he will inevitably have to be responsible for it. However, they did not want to lose people at all. So he asked him what he was thinking about it. The decor continued to laugh with them. She said that she noticed herself. There are so many people here that even weapons are not enough. After that, the monster shouted, reminding everyone of their previous words and forbidding someone to deny it. Her screaming was so loud that a whole pack of bats appeared immediately in the air, aiming just people. The cries began to be heard on all sides, but the main character stood calmly, covering his face with his palm until the monsters flew over him. One of the monsters pierced that it is time to understand who is the main one here. However, the protagonist, without hesitation for a moment, strongly moved forward, directly to the monsters, destroying everyone who was in his way. He waved his sword and dealt with his enemies one by one. He realized that first of all, it was necessary to save ordinary people. He shouted loudly so that everyone would retreat, but did not run away. They had to hold together and help each other. Panic people ran and shouted, seeking rescue. At that time, the girls desperately helped fight the ugly. Trody exclaimed that she now realized where the whole pack is hiding. They were rapidly approaching 2 more bats with open mouths. The girls skillfully won each opponent, reporting another victory over the next purpose. Standing her back to her back, Labor noted that they were beautifully fighting together, and Mizugu confirmed it with a smile. She felt something strange. It seemed that the big bats were listening to the manticores. Meanwhile, the protagonist approached the monster. After meeting with a demon and a terrible clash, he understood well, even the most monster can be overcome. Moving forward, Tiger aimed at a Manticore. He knew for sure, he had only one ball. Without hesitation, Tiger decided to make the last shot just between his eyes to finally end it. It was at this moment that a bat suddenly appeared in front of him, as if intentionally blocking. The hero, dissatisfied with the sideways, to bypass the unexpected obstacle. He noticed that the needles were sticking out in the neck. Then he understood. These are the same needles he had ever seen in 2 flying mice in a cave. If you look closely, you can see that others have it too. Comparing these facts, he guessed that the monster obeys the one who has his name. Suddenly, his reflection was interrupted by an unexpected cry. He saw Conro carried a giant bat, grabbing her shoulders. She begged for help. Zuo shouted to the main character to shoot at the big bat, but he immediately denied. This cannot be done, because the ball can accidentally injure the girl. The Manticore slowly began to hide in the darkness of the caves, saying that it was their last dinner, so they are not going to hurry up with the meal. Soon, they had to find a nest. She asked him to wait for her time. The bats and the girl followed her. Trody shouted that they could not allow him to do so. Nezuko tried to stop her, but the girl was unwavering. Taga assured her that they would definitely save her. After all, they just found it not so long ago. Mizuko agreed that he was right. Only one road led to the royal palace. The main character confirmed her words, but emphasized, it is impossible to go without thought, because the enemy has a handy that can arrange a trap. He suggested that they were poisonous needles. The girl only nodded confidently. She felt it for a long time. It was difficult for her to believe that now these needles would obey her. The man suggested that the best solution would be to collect the necessary resources and go back. He said that if everyone is united, he would be able to build shelters. People immediately agreed with this plan, and the tiger told the girls that they would definitely go to the aid of Conro. The girls were happy to support him. A little later, they stepped through the dark dungeon. The protagonist, illuminating the path ahead, warned that they had a serious problem. They found themselves in a room that opened several corridors further. The man was convinced that there must be some traces here. Mizu agreed with him and suggested looking at the terrain. Trody said that they decided to pursue the monster, trusting in their heart, but she could not help but think whether they could overcome it, because the main character had only one ball. Taiga agreed with her, adding that because of this he could not afford to shoot from afar. It was at this point that Musho reported that she found something important. She suggested looking closely, and they noticed that the arch had disappeared. This meant that something or someone tore it with the root. Apparently, the creature was giant. She agreed and added that this monster appeared from here. In other words, the girl believed that the monster is located at the end of this path. Trody agreed with her and suggested going there, but the man advised not to hurry, again reminding her of her previous words. The monster was not going to destroy their prey at once, so they had to hurry. This meant only one thing. They were already waiting for them. Trody wondered why they would simply be ambushed. She was told that, no matter how cool, it is very difficult to sneak to them from her back and strike. She replied that this is true, but his servants can not only be huge bats. The man thought, it is the case that a regular domestic cat can suddenly attract, and even to deal with it. And what about a giant monster with a human face? He decided that they should immediately make a plan. It is necessary to lure it into a trap, which they have already come across. Trody eagerly supported the idea, adding that they would then be able to defeat it with one blow. Mizuha, however, became interested in how they were going to lure the enemy to that place. They decided to talk to him, though they doubted whether they would be able to negotiate with this monster. It was unlikely that he would be so easy to trick, because he treated people as nothing worth the garbage, so they still have a chance. But if this plan does not work, there is a plan B. The reserve was stunned by narrow, cluttered corridors until they finally got the monster. Going into the room, the protagonist asked if he was waiting for him. Raising his hand, he asked for lying down then, and asked if the protagonist was offended. Returning to him, Manticore said she was C's. It was she who invited them here, and it was he who came to her. She asked if he realized that he could lose his life here. He replied to this that he had hoped for her mercy. She replied that he was very unusual, because she was not afraid at all. Raising his hands up, he denied that he did not say anything like this. Then she asked if he liked this place. The tiger didn't understand her. She said that there was once a great kingdom that she erased from the face of the earth. She destroyed the local ruler, forced people to submit to despair, and see this despair in her face. She said it. She laughed, as if she were in fact fun from her own words. Those who did not want to part with life were sacrificed by their own children, and those who had no children betrayed their friends. She wanted to survive this feeling again, destroying his kingdom. That is why the monster invited them to their den. After these words, the protagonist realized that he would not be able to agree, and it was time to go to Plan B. At that moment, she threw a gun to the main hero, and he assured that it would make her feel real despair. The Manticore smiled in response and said that she had long guessed their hiding place. She was preparing to attack people again, sending huge bats on them. Expanding her mouth, she screamed that all people should disappear. Taiga ordered Mizuko to start an attack. The girl warned everyone did not rotate back in any case. Immediately afterwards, she plunged into magic, and a bright light broke out around him, which illuminated everything around. The bats fell one by one to the ground, shrilling and crying. The Manticore involuntarily closed the eyes of an unbearably bright flash, not even realizing where this strange light came from. Trody noted that the monster actually turned out to be the most powerful of all. She advised him to be careful next time, and not to underestimate people. Timo, Taigo rushed forward, calling everyone not to pay attention to the bats and focus all power on Mantara's attack. The girls agreed with him and rushed into battle. At this point, the monster shuddered the tail, inflating him so that he looked like a bunch of dark needles. He is screaming frantically to know their place. She was rapidly attacking. They were confidently moving forward to their goal. Suddenly, the protagonist sharply ordered everyone to lie down to the ground. It was at this moment that a huge number of sharp thorns from the tail of a monster at a frantic speed rushed to the side of both bats and people. The museum screamed and immediately bent to the ground, avoiding a dangerous attack. Only then did she notice that poisonous needles flew in the air. The man, of course, shouted that they were doing the right head. At this point, Trody was almost standing nearby, keeping his dagger ready to strike. Seeing her, the monster prepared to strike another tail, warning everyone so that they would not even think of approaching her. However, the girl cleverly evaded every attack. Smiling, she answered at ease that she didn't even think about it, because it was not her responsibilities. The hero was behind the Manticore and decided that he was in her blind area. However, the monster immediately felt his presence and thought that he was too naive. Manticore immediately struck, but the hero managed to dodge. He asked her if she really believed that he no longer had balls, and in his thoughts, he noted that he had only one ball, and this latter had to be preserved. On the tail of the monster did not leave any poisonous thorn. Deciding to attack, she rushed forward, spreading her mouth wide and releasing sharp claws. She screamed that he would destroy him before he had time to do something. The hero did not hesitate to jump on her without lowering the weapons. His only purpose was to catch her eyes. He waited for the right moment and shot directly in the face of the monster. It was literally thrown back from a powerful blow. The girls watched them with surprise, wanting to understand whether they managed to defeat the monster. Taiga really killed him just into his eye. But the monster, flashing his other eye and smiling at the scent, looked at them further. She hit the paw next to the main character, and the pieces of the floor flew all over. The man realized that the opponent shattered and raised his head, but he was glad that he deprived her of the left eye. Now he could attack her blind area. However, she screamed as if she felt his thoughts, and warned that he did not underestimate her. It was at this moment that dark needles appeared at the tip of her tail. Peggle was amazed at how quickly the enemy recovered. He shouted loudly to girls to sank and run to other rooms. The girls obeyed him instantly. They crumbled to the sides and rushed in different directions. The monster was stating that they did not escape. She will immerse everyone in despair and destroy, torn into pieces. Her cry was so powerful that everything was dark around. The bats slid smoothly with dilapidated corridors, looking for people who managed to escape. They looked carefully into each room without missing any little things. Taiga thought about the big bats who were still circling nearby. They have become smaller, but they still created a lot of problems. He wondered if everything was well with the girls, but believed that they would cope. Now he should focus on how to destroy the Manticore. When he entered the room, it seemed to him that he got to the stable. If there was a drink, he would be able to make Molotov cocktail. But if it was possible to find gunpowder, it would be just perfect. He decided it was the best thing to find here. He suggested that these things remained after the extermination of the locals. Suddenly, he noticed a human figure ahead. He realized that it was a comrade. The protagonist looked around carefully, became convinced that no one was visible, and carefully went into the room where she was, calling her whispers. He asked her if she was all right with her, but he heard that it was not necessary to get closer. He did not understand why she said so. It was at this point that a strange substance began to appear on the ceiling above it. Suddenly, he seemed to be in the water. But a little thinking, he realized that it was not water at all. That is why the Manticore felt the presence of a slim. She was happy, because that's exactly how she was able to find them. Taiga and Kona literally sinking inside the body of the monster. They quickly realize that it is a living creature that slowly absorbs them. As it goes on, it will end for them. They heard the difficult steps of the great monster. They were approaching the shadow of the Manticore. The main character instantly realized that things were going bad. Suddenly, the core of the monster was cut by an axe. Because of this body, the mucous membrane was literally scattered into pieces. Thanks to this, they managed to get out of the trap, and in front of them they saw a Mizucho, which came to their rescue. Pointing to the dark hole in the dilapidated wall, she seriously ordered them to climb immediately and go there. Her face was concentrated and harsh. When the monster looked into the room, she did not see anyone there. She immediately realized that the girl had disappeared. Entreated that the tears could not do anything, the monster said that people should not think that their last moment would come quickly. Taiga thanked the girl who gave advice to wash away the slims with water, because they are not too strong, but absorb vital energy. If you catch a slim, it is necessary to destroy its nucleus. Suddenly, a piece of wall shifted, and someone's hand appeared from the hole. She appeared in the door, smiling happily. She was happy to see that everything was fine with everyone. Mizuko was looking in surprise. She did not notice how she found a secret passage. The girl replied that she understood it when she felt through the cracks between the bricks a light breeze. It was a great kingdom, and in case of danger, they took care of the secret paths in advance. It was such ingenuity that could be expected from the former theft. The girl confessed that she was confident. In this place there are some more secret aisles, and one of them probably leads beyond the kingdom. In the room through which she just passed, she happened to slugs. She realized that they were here. The protagonist thought a little, and then told her that he wanted to check something. Trody looked around, thinking that they had fallen into some warehouse. Taiga noted that there is full of things that he knows anything about. He lifted one of the objects and asked to look at the powder that resembled wheat flour. The girls were convinced that it was really a flour, and were surprised how it could be, because in his world it was considered a rarity. He calmly replied that the flowers were not uncommon. He just had no idea that they were able to create them. They replied that they could grow wheat if their fields were illuminated. But nothing sprouts in the dark. Looking at the man lying on the ground, Taiga realized that he took with him only flour, although he had a lot of food. It seems that when he was collecting supplies, other people destroyed it. This is how the history of this kingdom ended. There is no point in the secret aisles if no one knows about them. These people with difficulty dared to part with their lives. They did not even eat. The protagonist stated that he is enough. But the girls could not understand what he was talking about. He could not allow the same thing with his subjects. After showing a purse, she turned to the girls and said that she had something capable of destroying the monster. They carefully moved the secret corridors, watching closely for the Manticore. Taking the bags in their hands, friends said they were ready, and decided to go on. Jumping into the corridor right in front of the monster, they realized that they just need to throw bags and run around. Seeing the smoke, the monster decided that they were not capable of something smarter. She laughed and said confidently that she still had heavy bats. It is not necessary to think that such tricks will come to her. She stood in Dima and said he knew everything. Understands why they came to her and why they left others. It was unclear. Could they not invent a better way to defeat it? She realized that those people naively decided to limit her freedom of movement. They waited for it to come out of the smoke curtain, hoping to keep her trapped. The Poidu himself noted that she was too talkative. Taiga asked him if he was afraid of them. Then she added that she was talking to calm herself. The monster shouted at him so that he would not forget the caution. At the same time, she laughed and assured that she was far superior. All they stay for is apologize for her and hope for mercy. The main character was convinced that the girls were already safe. He answered her that he would show something really interesting. The man was interested in watching what he was going to show. He replied that it was a gift from him, and it was at this moment, through the smoke, that his gun appeared. At that moment, all tiny dust particles around the monster suddenly exploded. A mineral explosion came, and the monster was expelled from acute pain. The protagonist rushed to flee. I am sure that there is nothing worse than the explosion in a closed space. After all, the shockwave, which is almost impossible to escape, instantly covers everything around. The man was in a hurry. The wave almost got to him, so it was necessary to find shelter as soon as possible. The flames swept it on all sides. But the rescue shell was the fluid that covered his body. It was mucus. He destroyed his core and, shaking the remnants of mucus from himself, promised to never repeat such a mistake again. At that moment, a part of the roof collapsed next to it. Everything around becomes dangerous. The building begins to collapse. The monster looks and says that it recognizes that this explosion is caused by technologies from another world. She added that he was not born in this world, but is a guest from distant lands. Laughing, she said that an ordinary person would never be able to win her. Then he came closer and said quietly that he wanted to ask her one question. He wondered if she heard something about a man with a bird's head and a stamp glowing with light, as well as another with sharp fangs, all wrapped in fog. His question seems to be struck by Manticore. Taiga added that it was these people who brought him to this maze. That is why he is looking for them. She said in response she knew them. One of them lives over the dungeons and the other in its depth. The first name is Hiris. The second is called Dipvan. Hearing these names, the main character felt anxious. The beast added that this testifies to his true uniqueness, because it was behind him that these creatures were referred to. However, it was strange that they decided to chase it together. Another roof collapsed, and the stones fell directly into the monster. Taiga asked her again that she was meant. She replied that they would give everything to destroy each other. She still wanted to say something, but the stones finally fell asleep from her head to feet, and the protagonist remained struck, only having managed to sway from impotence. At the same moment, everything was finally crumbled. Huge beams with a roar fell just in front of the girls. Amazed, they shouted, turning to the main character. They discussed whether the explosive was too powerful and did not know what to do next. Trody insisted that he should rush after him, and it was at this point that the main character came out of the secret passage and reported that he was here all this time. The girls were genuinely happy with his return. He said he believed in their success, and it was time to return to the palace. When they came out, the exclamations of joy about their return were heard around. People praised their king, believing that now their country would inevitably flourish. The girl said that the greetings for the main characters would be special, and the man exclaimed that it was time for a festive feast. Everyone felt that the success of the first expedition should be noted. Subsequently, they all gathered in the same room to discuss what is happening. Seeing the tiger drink, Mizuko was interested in what it was. He explained that he tried to brew the roots of the tree. She came to the conclusion that it was probably some special tea. It seems that the labyrinth tea was very valuable, and everyone thought whether it was stored in the composition. However, it remained a mystery, but there were a lot of flour. These people may have large fields. The protagonist could not believe that such a large country had disappeared from the face of the earth. Trody noted that she did not at all the hero of the event to walk with such a gloomy look. She cheered him up and said to keep her head high. And here they reported that they prepared a gift for him. She showed him a necklace, explaining that she decided to take it because she thought that she had to wear it anymore. He smiled in response and noted that nothing surprised. The former thieves always remain themselves. Mizuko added that the decoration is reminiscent of a real royal relic. Taiga thought that they managed to get out of there alive and unharmed, stock up on a pile of provisions, and finally learn something about those people. It was a real test, very serious. Fortunately, everyone remained alive. And now it would be nice to find some tea. He made many good friends. The girl wondered if he's savoring tea. He smiled and replied that this drink reminded him of something important. Perhaps he would call this taste the taste of victory. Misuho corrected the glasses and, smiling happily, told the boys that, as far as she knows, they had successfully returned from their first expedition yesterday. They were able to stand against the whole troops of the giant bats, fought fearlessly with a huge nth, and eventually defeated the insidious Manticore. And finally, they took their first step towards creating the great kingdom of Bravo. The people around her were watched by her indomitable spirit, and in the meantime she suggested to review the awards they won. They won the bark and branches of the murak tree, creepers, bones, and canines. They still managed to get the skin of giant bats and poisonous needles. Taiga said that everything would not work away. He began to think about whether to return to the rest. But Trody believed that going back there was not the best idea. She added that in the maze lived the falls that devour the remains of destroyed monsters. So, most likely, there is nothing left there. Mizu suggested that you first make a list of all the resources received, and then decide together how best to use them. The protagonist replied that in his opinion, it is not necessary to worry because of it. Meanwhile, the girl already carefully sorted the branches and gave instructions what to do with them. Trody added that she seemed to be like to bother with papers. The tiger turned to the girl and asked if she had already decided how they would use these resources. The girl replied that if they dispose of them with their mind, they will be able to restore their kingdom a little. After that, the girl smiled and again asked to call her a minister. Everyone was convinced that she fully deserved this title. The tiger threw the fruit from the tree and wondered what it was. Mizuho replied that it was an ant fruit. Trody was surprised that he was actually going to eat it. She added that this fruit grew up to a monster that devours people. The man replied that there may be a hidden poison inside. It was at that moment that he cut the skin of the fetus. She also became wondering what he was doing. He explained that he wanted to check with a knife if he feels the pain, and whether he would respond somehow to his action. As a result, he came to the conclusion that everything seemed to be fine. If nothing changes in 15 minutes, you can take it to your mouth. If you do not react in 5 minutes, try to bite. If the taste is bitter but adds strength, absorb the juice and the pulp of spit. If they do not notice any strange changes in well-being in 8 hours, you can eat half of this fruit and wait 8 hours again. If there is no weakness or ailment afterwards, then you can try to eat a little more and watch the condition for 24 hours. Trody did not understand all these difficulties. Taiga only explained that if everything goes well, this fruit can be eaten. And as a last resort, a good jam will come out of it. Then Trody asked the minister to ask what they would do next. Then they went out to the room with huge columns, and everyone began to guess what it was for a place. The girl replied that it seems to be some composition. She got the necklace and showed him to everyone who was around. Trody could not understand why she pulled out the necklace she found. Mizuho replied that if they continue to explore the dungeons, they may come across new treasures, and then he will definitely need a security guard. That is why she wants Trody to become a guardian of royal treasures. The girl only blushed and was confused. It was difficult for her to believe that she was offered such responsibility. Once she was a thief. I could just take these things and escape as I did before. The minister explained to her that he did not know anyone else who could cope with this business. It is unlikely that in the whole kingdom would be more skilled. The girl was ashamed to hear these words. The main character first thought that she did not notice that it was only a deception. However, she agreed. Trody was really suitable for this role. The muse also added that even if she wanted to escape, she just had nowhere to go. Therefore, he decided to entrust it to her. She did not find a place from happiness. She rushed to embrace the minister, but she cleverly evaded, and the girl fell on the ground. Mizuga seriously warned her not to approach closer. She couldn't understand the trading why it happened. She lay on the ground and wept quietly from the insult. The priest turned to the protagonist, asking where the needles of the mantic went, because he did not see them. She also replied that these needles are very dangerous, so she decided to keep them with her. If they have a monster such as a Manticore, it would not be easy to defeat it, so he decided that he would be wise to use them in battle. If they return a handkerchief, they will be able to use it in battle. Trody was surprised by such an act, and noted that he was really like a ninja with poisoned needles. Taiga could not understand why he became ninja. The girls replied that he was the same as they were. This was very surprised by the Taiga, so he suggested returning to sorting resources. He then asked the minister to ask what to do next. The girl replied that it was necessary to develop the infrastructure of the kingdom and to improve it. The protagonist realized that she really liked it. She continued to tease him, jokingly calling ninze. It began to annoy the hero, and he asked her to stop. Residents gathered around the fire and discussed their actions. They agreed that they needed to bring more ropes to build a planned structure. Thanks to the strong branches of the anthill, they managed to build meat dryers, so I didn't have to eat all the boars at once. The guy still wondered if they did not use a blanket to keep the smoke better. The girl replied that thanks to smoke, they can even cook insects. The man was surprised by their skills and thought how good they were able to create such simple but useful things. At this point he was called. The man confessed that it would be great to make a fireplace for cooking, but he did not know how to build it. Trody noted that they will be able to cook even more delicious food. Taiga shared. He had an idea, because at one time he heard something interesting from the survival instructor. To find out what he learned, I decided to ask him about it. He smiled and answered. It was a stove from Yukon. As they say, it is better to see once than to hear 100 times. He suggested starting from the beginning, to collect everything you need. To do this, we will first need stones and clay. They started harvesting. First, mix the clay thoroughly. Next, spread the stones with a circle, but be sure to leave the hole for food. The higher the stones, the harder they should be so that the base of the furnace does not fall apart. From the clay, they stick a strong structure, and on top they will put a flat stone with a smooth surface. It is here that all the heat will gather. She wondered if the pot would remain in place. He replied that they would use it as a stove, and assured that everything was ready. The chef remained delighted with this result. Looking at her, she said that he said now he had everything he needed to cook any dish. Tigress allowed him to dispose of himself as he desires. The man barely held back tears of joy. When he lost his store, it seemed to him that everything was over. But now Nadia settled in his heart again, and he is ready to do everything to open the store again. From now on, it will always prepare the most delicious dishes for its rescuer. The protagonist thought that he would probably never get used to such words of gratitude. Trody gladly asked to prepare fruits for her for dessert, but the men looked at her gloomy and nervous. Taiga decided that he would be properly listening to the thoughts of others on the development of the kingdom. When the time comes, he will have to ask people's wishes. Trody suggested that another stove be erected so that more food could be cooked and boiling more water. However, the man said that one furnace is enough. At first he wanted to equip the forge. Watching the water falls down, they thought, it will not be easy. However, there is water here, so this place is perfect for this. Taiga noticed their thoughtfulness and asked what had happened. The girl replied that a lot of fuel was needed to work the melting oven. It would be very difficult to get coal or something like this. Then the man wondered if it was possible to use magic, because otherwise it would simply not work out weapons or tools. He replied that this way really exists. For example, you can use the warmth of the dawn. This is how monsters work, or use the forces of the maze itself. Misuko said that this force is related to maze disasters. It turned out that the intervention of the forces of the maze can change the properties of things. In any case, most tools were lost, so it is almost unrealistic to restore the smithy. The minister only sighed hard. She said that they would not be able to build a prison. Trody was indignant because she looked at him when she said it. The woman reassured her, asking not to worry. She assured that she would solve this problem as soon as she feels better. To do this, it's simply grind the anvil between the palms until it melts. Everyone around was amazed and watched what would happen now. Trody asked the main character hotly so that she would tell them something. He asked her to calm down and assured that together they would definitely find an anvil. When she was about to go, she assured, forging knives and cauldrons, her business, so you cannot rush. If you need to give out something, let them just call it. At this point, a man approached and reported that his task was completed. The tiger asked if they had a rope. He was answered that there was nothing to worry. They cut the vines and soaked them in the water to get strong ropes. The tiger realized that everything happens in the same way as on Earth. He wondered if they thought of it. He was confirmed that it was so. In response, the protagonist praised him for a beautifully done work. The minister asked what he instructed to do. Showing a rope with plates, he explained that he asked to alarm. It seemed to him that it was a good idea to protect himself from unwanted guests. The minister asked again, and the Trinity explained that the giant demon led the demons. It is good that they managed to meet him and destroy him in the maze, because if this monster got to them, the trouble would not be avoided. The protagonist added that it may well happen that the intelligence detachment will take into their territory. Can they imagine what if they are attacked? Mizuko replied that it all depends on the number of their army, so there is no sure to say anything for sure. But perhaps that giant demon was the head of this land, and now they will no longer have any problems. Taiga could not help but admire her optimism. Trody asked what would be the captured lands, for example, with the Entic Hills. The minister replied that the kingdom could dispose of the territories obtained at his own discretion. In other words, all these lands now belong to the king himself. Taiga realized that the kingdom in the maze has many rooms connected. When they came to the entrance, the girls asked him what to do next. Mizuko also decided to mention their possessions. At the moment, they have no building outside the kingdom. The protagonist asked what she means. Try to answer that it was something like a farm or smithy. He knows that the forges are best placed near the water, so they are often allocated for separate rooms, which are subsequently turned into separate buildings. Taiga agreed. It really made sense. To develop their kingdom, they needed to equip every room for different buildings. The minister also supported the idea. He added that in this case, the anthill with a large amount of land will be a great place for agriculture. These words returned him to the memories of the former home for a moment. Mizuko supported his opinion, noting that it was a wonderful idea. So they will be able to provide themselves with food. She wondered about the cave with large bats. It seemed to her that they would hardly be of some benefit. They are directly related to the hill, so they should be made part of the kingdom. Of course, she was told that she is right. But does she not seem to have problems with that? At that moment, they just came to a mountain covered with stalactites. The girl added that there were whole mountains of roasty litter. She noted that they, of course, could remove them from here, but the cave would still remain dirty. So she became wondering if she could handle it somehow. The man thought about her words. The minister replied that they would still have to solve the problem somehow. After all, if they really arrange on the hill of the farm, they will have to lay water through these caves. The man decided that they would collect pus. Trody was surprised by his words. He said that pus was used to feed the soil on Earth and wanted to try it here. Pus may contain orthophosphoric acid, which is a good fertilizer. In addition, he once heard that powder can be made with nitrate. Perhaps in this world it will also work. He wondered if they knew that bats can be used to make gunpowder. Trody replied that she had already heard something. Even before the war, people sold pus at a crazy price. She was even ordered to steal him. Mizuko was very surprised by such a turn of events. She couldn't believe that the girl was really doing so. Responding, she said that it was not necessary to humiliate her at all, because she had already refused. But the man noted what it means that they can use it as fertilizer. Trody thought to sell it. However, the minister immediately denied that it is impossible now. First, you need to decide on foreign policy. She replied that it may be worth using it to make gunpowder. If they really dreamed of conquering the maze, they needed weapons and equipment. However, Mizuko doubted that her idea seemed normal for everyone. Trody asked the main character how to make gunpowder. He replied that they would need to get a nitrate, and for this they would have to evaporate it with manure. The smoke will be incredibly stink. Mizuho noticed that this hill seemed much wider than she imagined. She thought out loud, if you remove all the moss here, this place could be equipped with wonderful fields for farming. But the man did not even understand what she was talking about. For him, the word farm was unfamiliar. Looking around, he realized that there were no traces of Entei left. He quickly guessed that it was the case of the hands of the same victories. They made a lot of efforts to move the rest of the Nth to their home, and coped with it only one night. He wondered what happened to the vines. After the girl lit them, she said they were hanging quietly. The protagonist wondered if she was sure that they should not be filmed. Mizuho replied that if you be careful, then everything would be fine. Of course they will grow, eating insects and small animals. But that's how they can make more ropes. If something happens suddenly, they will always be able to escape to the manor. They discussed whether it was worth building a fence just in case, and eventually decided that it was a good idea. But then Trody said they seemed to have forgotten about one very important thing. Will they be able to grow something without a star? Everyone agreed with her. Then the protagonist said that he had one proposal, and the minister immediately wondered what he was in mind. In the core mantle, there were many secret moves that they could use. The girls realized that they were hinted at the need to look there, and they decided to examine everything around. He asked if you could somehow get seeds or rice, and whether it is possible to find them in the maze. The girls explained that there are other ways, but there are some difficulties with them. Previously, these things could be obtained by entering into an agreement with other kingdoms, or purchasing from a traveler. But all this changed after the underground storm. They were in a difficult situation. All this happened because they lack any information about the surrounding area. Not only is it difficult for them, Traders also have a hard time. The storm destroyed all their usual trade routes. Taiga thought about what he saw earlier. He realized that they were detached from all over the world, but nevertheless, he does not feel any threat in their position. They can develop quietly further. The girls had fun that something would come up with something. He already imagined what their kingdom would be like. It looked like a real hope. They stood in the middle of a large open space. People worked hard with hoses, mastering a new field. The main character remembered how he was in Southeast Asia a few years ago. In Brunei, he stood in sunglasses and looked up. He found himself in the middle of a dense, impenetrable forest, and realized that he probably lost the conductor. There was no soul around. Only trees and shrubs surrounded it from all sides. Looking back, he realized there was no workout right now. He did not like these jungles. Still, he was ordered not to keep up. Now it's time to find out why he felt so defenseless. Suddenly, he had an orangutan and began to watch him closely. The animal made a quiet sound, and they just looked into each other for a while. The girls called him hard, and it brought the guy out of thought. They asked why he was so angry in the distance. The guy replied that he just remembered how orangutan helped him once. The girls did not understand him and asked him. Maybe he was just tired. Many days have passed. He suggested that he was, but continued to think about fragility and defenselessness. They did not stop asking him what he hinted at. He replied that he was thinking what they needed to survive here. Then he asked everyone whether they seemed to know about this maze too little. If you imagine that people are in the jungle without things, will they be able to survive there? Of course, the jungle is dangerous and conceal many threats. But even more importantly, only the one who understands where there is a safe place can survive here. Similarly, with survival in the maze, they need to stop wandering up until someone disappeared. He believes that they will manage somehow. Trody adds that they win one victory after the other. He learned a lot about the jungle from Ibanez. It was knowledge accumulated over many decades. He asked the girls if they knew that the danger could be mobile, and yet whether they were trained to fight the Manticore. They definitely need a good mentor. The minister realized what he was in mind when talking about defenselessness. Trody added, if there is someone who knows something about these monsters, they will be able to avoid many suffering. The protagonist tried to avoid any risks. But what can be demanded from weapons, if not even medicines now? This means that even a small scratch can cause serious trouble. At that moment, Trody screamed painfully. The protagonist immediately asked if everything was fine with her. The girl replied that everything was well with her, but the wooden hoe was not very strong. We need to be careful. The minister asked her to show her wound to wash her. She replied that all is well. The tiger noted that the wounds need to be treated, otherwise it would only get worse. Then she agreed. There have been times when people suffered from germs that penetrated even the smallest scratches. No one can know what diseases we'll have to face here. It is better to immediately assume that they are still unknown to the disease, but now they have only water and flaps of fabric to process their wounds. Just imagine what it can lead to later. It is already scary. Early in the morning, the minister reached out and said that the morning seemed surprisingly good. She decided to go to wash until everyone else slept peacefully. It was at this moment that a suspicious man was hidden behind the column. The girl slowly came to the water, remembering how the Tiga told her before that he had to keep herself in order not to pick up a disease or some infection. Suddenly, she felt someone's gaze. At that moment, she noticed Trody, which shake her hands from dust. She turned to her. They say why you are here, because it is too early to get up, you could sleep a little. But in response, she heard that Trody did nothing, and did not understand what was talking about. From these words, the look of Mizuko became truly creepy. Mizuku went beyond the screen, wondering why the girl looked. She began to take off her clothes, preparing for bathing. She was scattered because she was very cold. She realized that the water was most likely as icy, but a fire was burning near which it could be warmed. Turning, she saw a man sleeping by the fire. He laughed a little later and apologized, because he did not even suspect that he had got into a women's bath. He introduced, Latin of 5 stars, a traveler. He asked where to find the ruler of this kingdom. The museum replied that the duties of the ruler are now performing a taiga. The man confirmed her words. The traitor never suffered when he had time to appear. Latin replied that he considers the protagonist not so simple. The minister once again asked him about the opinion of trade. He replied that he was a merchant who was doing the whole kingdoms. He is sometimes called a merchant. He travels a maze from one country to another, buying excess goods and helps to find what is missing. Taiga asked him if he was interested in wholesale. He replied that he was not interested. He sells goods only in small quantities. After that, he suggested that he had. The protagonist asked the animal that the man led on a leash. He replied that it was a goldfish. Isn't it obvious? Or one of them has not seen it before. The tiger said he had already met with goldfish. But then there was a new question. Why did it hang in the air? He coiled and confessed that he was ashamed to admit it. But now they really had nothing. Another laughed and said that it was obvious. The merchant said that for the first time he hears the kingdom. It seemed to appear during chaos and a storm in the maze. But the storm was something special. The merchant barely withstands, and several of his clients did not survive the element at all. The protagonist reminded that, as he said before, they have no money at all. However, he had another question. At this point, the merchant rushed in his bag, looking for something there. He immediately replied that he did not issue a loan. Who knows it? Perhaps tomorrow. There would be no kingdom tomorrow. But then Taiga stated that he had a different proposal for him. He once served in the army and acquired considerable skills. Now, looking for a master, he is ready to share half of his earnings. Hearing such an offer, the girls could not believe their ears. The merchant was amazed because he could not believe that the ruler was actually a mercenary. Mizu exclaimed that it was not ridiculous at all. After all, he was about to leave them to make money. Everyone relied on him. She just couldn't agree to such an idea. She forbade the ruler to leave her possessions. Taiga asked her to wait a little. He recalled that he still needed a mentor. Having moved to another country, he will be able to find a new ruler or experienced mercenaries who will teach him to survive in a mysterious maze. Until it is, he is going to hire guards so that they are safe. But the girl immediately denied. They say she did not mean it at all. Then the merchant laughed because he did not expect such a turn. He saw many rulers, but he meets for the first time. The offer seems attractive, but trust is too important, so the hero cannot help. He only sincerely apologizes. The girl sighed with relief, but Antigas suggested that he finish. But the merchant stopped him because he had one offer for them. One of them is selling land and can sell people. He was in mind that he was able to supply labor to other countries. However, in his opinion, there are difficult times even for this. So there is only one thing: trading information. At their time, even the smallest rumor had a price. Transfer, legends, ancient maps, samples from sorcery laboratories. All this could give them a little more life. The information is also important to traders. It is important for them to know where you can find a favorable opportunity for trade. He asked them with their opinion about this and asked if they had any information. Miso replied that she was coming from the storytellers. Their race has existed since ancient times, so she knew many legends and interesting stories. He asked her to tell one of them. Miso agreed, and in response he promised that she would thank her next time. The protagonist realized that the deal was successful. Trody noticed that his proposal was truly unsuccessful. Taiga agreed with him and added that the girl was angry. She replied that she was well aware of what he was trying to achieve, because she often acted the same. But with Mizuko, everything was different. She had her own special story about it. One day the man left his wife and went to the city, looking for a maze. When he completed all the things and hurried home, a wall suddenly appeared on his way. The man was thinking about getting back to his beloved, but no idea helped. This phenomenon is called variable maze, and it happens quite often. She does not know how it was in the world where he came from. But here the division is final. If they divorced, then forever. A few days ago, Mizuho had to say goodbye to her friends. Even if he decides otherwise, she will still try to stop him. The main character understood it. They saw the minister and the merchant shook their hands. Trent decided to approach and ask how they had. She was smart, though sometimes she could be easily agitated. The girl added that she also did not want him to go. Without it, it will become very boring here. The merchant was satisfied with the agreement that he had just concluded. The next time he promised to bring them goods, but insisted that they did not convey this information to others. The protagonist had only one request for him. If the item could be exchanged immediately, it would gladly accept the gun. Lelatin proposed to conclude their first agreement, but he did not have a weapon, just a little equipment. The tiger remembered that he still needed something, and the merchant asked what he wanted this time. Then the man asked if he had tea. People asked the merchant whether he was already going on the road. He confirmed, thanked everyone for a warm reception, and confessed that he managed to conclude favorable agreements. Mizuho replied that their first meeting was not pleasant. He remembered how he came late at night and had no idea where you could spend the night. Because of this, he woke up from a shrill cry. Taiga wondered how he managed to get here, because no one even noticed his appearance. Only one road leads to the palace. He just smiled at that and agreed that he was. After pointing to the gap, he stated that he had come from there. It surprised the protagonist, because he had no idea that it was possible to go through it. But the merchant insisted he was wrong. Sitting on a fish, he replied that he just flew through everything. The tigress was surprised again, seeing how he hung in the air. The girls enthusiastically appreciated such a decision and wondered why they did not think before. Men laughed again. He said there was nothing strange here. A common merchant, such as he, cannot travel through these gaps. It is a matter of crazy heroes. In most people, even with one glance, the mind runs down. Trent to confess that she was also scared, but over time she was used to it. Mizu remained distrustful. The protagonist thought it was a really serious problem. Earlier, he believed that at least from the part of the break they were safe, but it turned out to be false. This kingdom remained completely defenseless. The merchant said that he chose a wonderful place for the construction of the kingdom. That is how we found them. But the tiger did not believe his words. Then the merchant asked if he was worried about probable attacks, because he is now the ruler. He suggested looking at the wall that was erected. It opened a whole other kingdom, so invisible that it could be easily noticed. He dared to look forward, but immediately received a hail of arrows and stones. It seems that people do not care at all what is happening on the other side. Another thing. The main character is a completely cold-blooded person. The merchant was just lucky. He was not going to demonstrate it. But if it happened, then to be. He asked the taiga if he needed a weapon. It was unclear why this, because the crossbow would be much cheaper. He replied that it could be said that this thing was his partner for 20 years. Latin noted that she looks a little salted. Then he asked to tell her more. The merchant, holding a rifle, carefully wrapped in a fabric, said that it is a special story behind it. This weapon was never resold. He created her experienced blacksmith to order the ruler of one of the kingdoms, and this rifle is very similar to the one he had. However, the ruler did not like it, and then the thing went to the merchant and left no one. If he answers, then Latin will pass this thing to the protagonist. The protagonist thought it was nothing compared to what Mizuko had. He voiced his opinion aloud, they say. It is just a rifle. Due to the spiral barrel and rotation of the ball, the range and accuracy of the shot have increased many times. However, such weapons require special ammunition, and it seems not easy to charge. The merchant replied that it was incredible. He talked so easily as if he had known him for a long time. As promised, he handed him the gun with the chains. The protagonist thanked him and asked if he would just give him goods from the black market. Latin replied that it was not at all. With his knowledge, he could invent something much more interesting, and then Latin suggested buying this knowledge from him. After that, he said goodbye and flew away. Taiga could not believe her eyes again. This fish really flew. Surprised, he quickly turned to the minister and sincerely apologized for his recent recklessness. The girl replied that everything is fine. She realized that he only wanted the best, and asked not to worry about what happened. Trody laughed at her words, they say. The girl herself is very worried, and for that the joke was immediately received a slight slap. The museum confessed that she was a little nervous during the exchange. Trody wondered why she was silent about the necklace. Mizuko replied that he could not exchange him. In a few days the promised goods should come. Finally, they will get seeds. Now they already have weapons, so tomorrow they will go for intelligence. At this point, the man ran up to them and shouted in his whole voice that they were being attacked, and the farm and all the inhabitants are at risk. They rushed to the hill. Before their eyes, a terrible picture appeared. The monster loaded people on carts that pulled huge boars. People, frightened in the cages, begged their ruler for help, and the monsters only smiled ominously, turning his views on him. Then the protagonist realized that he was faced with the same demon, who returned with his comrades. The minister immediately realized that it was a chariot of demons who stole their people. They quickly armed, preparing to repel, and it was at this moment that the monster rushed to them in the attack. The protagonist stated that he would take the task of distracting enemies and instructed the girls, in no case to let the carts disappear. Apparently, it is only part of the whole group. Their goal has long been clear. They are only interested in one, to devour others. Taiga sharply sent a bayonet to his gun to the monster that attacked him. One accurate blow was enough to kill the monster. However, the next monster rushed at him, waving the axe. His blows were extremely strong. He seemed extremely dangerous. The opponent stood opposite, predatory teeth on the main character. Meanwhile, other attackers grabbed people who shouted loudly and begged for help. Trody threw her dagger into one of them and hit the target. She skillfully used the surrounding area, cleverly maneuvering between enemies and drawing new blows. In the end, only she remained alone. At this point, the protagonist cleverly evaded the attack of a gigantic enemy. He waved his axe, destroying everything in his way. The man, meanwhile, thought, "There is a bone in the elbow, called the inner overgrowth of the humerus. If you hit directly, acute pain will pierce the whole body." He managed to hit the target exactly, and the muzzle of the monster twisted in pain. But the protagonist did not stop there. He struck the next stroke in a hostile face. With this blow, he finally defeated the enemy and wondered how much trouble he caused him. Looking around, the hero began to look for others. In the distance, he noticed one of the carts of stolen people in the direction of the tunnel. Trody called him, quickly sat on another cart, and shouted to sit with her, so they would catch up with them. At that moment, the Miskoa assisted the wounded. She stated that she would handle herself here, and the protagonist should rescue others. He jumped on a visa and agreed with her words. He shouted to her that she was leaving the palace's defense on her shoulders. She had to distribute all the equipment she received from the merchant. She agreed and wished them to keep themselves. The carriage moved rapidly. Moving deeper the tunnel, they noticed a trolley in front of the trolley. Through the iron cage, their own trolley became much more difficult. Trody wondered if they were going to arrange a ram. The tiger replied that at such a speed could be too dangerous. It will climb on it from above and grab it. The girl laughed and said that they needed to cope with their relatives. The cart was rapidly approaching the opponents. When their wheels were leveled, the protagonist resolutely jumped to the cage. He grabbed her, keeping his weapon, and the enemy was already waiting for his attack. However, the main character in one movement dropped him from the cart. The driver noticed it. His teammate was left behind, so he dramatically pulled the carts. Through this unexpected maneuver, two carts collided with each other, and now they were rapidly approaching the stone wall. Noticing this, the monster has quenched and grunted all the voice. In response, Trody cleverly jumped on her cart and lightly inserting a dagger in his head. She said that they had a lot of trials through them. Now he does not escape. With one precise movement, she put a point in this story. She shouted to the protagonist so that he immediately stopped the cart. Then he turned to the people, reporting that they were already free. In response, people wept with joy and began to thank him. It was at this moment that the hero noticed that the wall began to collapse. They hastily accelerated the movement of the trolley, trying to escape from the danger of collapse from the ceiling. The girl was convinced that everything would fall, but the man denied, because the case was different. He noticed in the distance as someone brought their weapons on them. It was a ballist, which was controlled by another monster. It has already been charged and is ready to release a new projectile. Taiga was loudly warned everyone that the enemy was starting to be a new attack, so we need to hide immediately. The monster aimed again, charged the gun with an arrow, and shot straight in their direction. The arrow survived one of the boars dragged in the cart, and he swayed. The girl tried his best to keep the cart in motion. It was important for her not to stop for a moment. They stopped because the enemy fired very well. The protagonist quietly said that he would deal with this situation, and then asked her whether she could open the castle. She replied that he could do it, but she did not understand how he could handle the enemy who is so far away. She added that she did not know what world he came from, but with such a weapon in the maze he was not shining. There is simply no chance. At this point, the monster was already preparing to strike a new blow. Divide from the shots, the protagonist said that the inhabitants of the maze were afraid of spacious and open places. Therefore, the monsters eventually learned to adapt to this. Stopping, he rolled on the ground, while realizing that the goal is about 300 meters. Such a rifle will definitely cope with this task. Their views crossed. The protagonist and monster were numb, studying each other closely. Taiga remembered how he always felt confident when he held a sniper rifle. They were opposite each other. The monster stood on the rise where two buildings were connected, and the main character sat on earth. At the same moment, both made a shot. The arrow broke down towards the main character, and the bullet accurately hit the target, forcing the monster to jump back. Taiga confidently met the approaching attack without hesitation. He didn't even shudder when the arrow flew by. The protagonist noticed that the goal was defenseless. He did not look from her to the very end. People wondered, did not believe their eyes. He still hit the target. Some even shouted that he was no different than a real demon. The main character immediately warned everyone that the shot could be heard by someone. You need to get out of here quickly. The enemies were already nearby. At this time, the monster gathered, armed with full. Their leaders stood on a high cart behind the main group. Suddenly, one of them hit the gong, and the whole flock moved forward. At this point, everyone was hotly discussing whether the monsters could ambush and were already in their den. The protagonist said that the enemy tried to crush them, sending the fastest detachments. However, their plan failed. The characters recognized the trap and neutralized the bait. The protagonist was convinced that the bellied had to act together with the main detachment. The girl explained this easier. In other words, they want to attack their kingdom. They need to return and prepare for defense as soon as possible. The man doubted whether demons could plan so well. The girl replied that they may have a wise leader. He decided that that giant was the leader. Demons obey only those who are stronger than them. Apparently, among them was someone who was just approaching this role. In addition, it has a good organization. This is noticeable at least on the prepared carts. It is evident that they were seriously treated, though they have not faced with a terrible enemy. At this point, their attention is distracted by the sound of the closet of gong. They saw the monsters rapidly approaching. The tiger realized that it was an avant-garde group of an enemy. The man asked him what to do now, because they would not be able to escape on this cart. The protagonist replied that his main goal was to save them. He promised to win a little time, and they needed to retreat. Trody shouted that it was just madness. She did not understand what he could do alone. The guy replied that he would come up with something, but the girl denied. If so, she will stay with him, because she accompanies him. However, the protagonist threatenedly shouted at her that in this case it was an order. She needs to leave this place immediately. The girl clenched her teeth from anger and quietly swore. That is why she jumped to the cart, shouting to show she likes foreigners such as he, so everything should be fine with him. The taiga did not even have time to recharge their weapons. In the meantime, the monster was already staring at him. He remembered the girl's words. It was at this moment that the arrow hit the ground in front of him. He firmly decided, whatever happens, he would stand, because he did not go to say goodbye to life in this place. The monster fired at him again. The conduct was rapidly approaching, but the protagonist managed to hide behind the boar. He was surprised that the Baltic arrow was made of steel, too heavy to fight it as a weapon. Turning a weapon from the monster's body, he threw it right at the enemy. This throw hit the boars harnessed in the cart, and they immediately lost their speed. The boars overturned, and the cart with a frantic speed rushed forward. From a powerful blow, he crumbled into small chips, a curtain of dust, which was not visible to the protagonist, who was already preparing to attack one of the enemies. He wisely used the fog to attack the monsters. Due to the poor visibility, they did not see the enemy, and blindly beat in all directions, trying to guess the place by sound. It just became more angry. But this did not interfere with Taiga. Having gone by the monster from the back, he made several precise blows, leaving no chance to the enemy. When everything was completed, the taiga understood. He needs to run to the palace immediately. Unlike the military, nothing was burdened, and it was easy to run. Suddenly, he felt that someone was approaching. An unfamiliar creature radiated a strange, incomprehensible aura. Is it really the same leader that the girl told about? He immediately realized. Here she is. His opportunity. If this enemy wins, the battle will end. At that moment, a terrible monster with great horns and 2 swords in her hands suddenly jumped out of the ceiling. It was a creature with a deer head. They became opposite each other and watched closely at each opponent's movement. He realized that this monster was standing in his way again and aimed at him. It was necessary to quickly get rid of this obstacle with one accurate shot. Meanwhile, highly upstairs, the creature in a black suit watched. When the girl came to the village, the residents immediately asked her whether the demons really attacked them. They hoped that those who were taken away remained intact. Mizuko warned everyone that no one knows how big this demonic gang is. She urged people to cook weapons and be alert to the next attack. However, some screamed that it would not lead to anything. They did not even imagine what to do with it. They would just eat them. Maybe it would be better to just escape the world? But there is nowhere to run. The only difference is that you will either die from hunger or get someone to your mouth. The girl urged everyone to calm down, but no one listened to her. At this time, she just called it the Trody, which just got out of the tunnel, and the minister was very pleased to see that everything was fine with her. However, she became interested in why he stayed there. The girl explained that he did it to give them the opportunity to escape. It is thanks to him now. Mizuko could not understand how they could handle without the main character, but Trody assured that she was returning to him, so everything that happens here is now on her shoulders. She cheered others and shouted to help people remove the cage from the cart. The minister was against this, because they were creators and had the obligation to protect ordinary people. She could not allow their combat force to decrease even more. Trody was indignant because it meant to leave her husband to his or her husband. But Mizuko said that if the kingdom had died, he would have nowhere to go back. Did he not remain precisely to protect people? She was aware that everyone was worried around, but they could not lose this anxiety. Their true enemy is not anxiety, but real demons. They will be able to win if they are united. They will protect their kingdom side by side. At this point, the protagonist fired from his weapon on the enemy, skillfully reflecting every attack. Taiga watched and thought that he was really very strong. When the man swung the bayonet, he immediately stopped the attack with 2 swords, and then immediately went on the offensive. Then the man realized, it is enough to turn away for a moment, and the opponent will immediately take a chance and destroy it. However, there was very little time. The blow of the monster flew just past Nika, the main character. He cleverly evaded, rolling sideways, and instantly picking up on his feet, was ready to meet the next attack. The man stopped the sword with a shot from his gun, but the monster used the second weapon and wounded it in his shoulder. Without spending time, the creature rapidly jumped into the air. Looking around, the protagonist noticed that he was surrounded by a flock of monsters. They set their spears and axes on him, ready to attack at any moment. The hero realized that he was in a completely hopeless situation, so he decided to fight to the end and take as many enemies with him as he could. The creature in the suit watched carefully for everything that happened when suddenly magic began to flash in his hand. However, an unexpected event made him distract. The protagonist explained that for the sake of all he had to reduce their number, and finally he would not give up a cup of black tea. But suddenly his attention attracted something from above. Next to him landed a girl who dispersed a crowd of monsters in one wave. Smiling brightly, she approached the boy and offered help, noting that he seemed difficulties. He wondered who she was. The girl in response said she was a traveling knight. It is called the winged Atoria. Hearing the sound of the shot, she rushed to help and offered her support. The protagonist thanked her for care and said that she would really help him get out of this situation. She lifted her sword and screamed to the demons, ordering them to tremble with fear and run away if they appreciate their own life. Those who wanted to experience her anger could be attacked together. She was ready to accept any challenge. Saying this, she did not stop and fearlessly attacked every monster around. She noticed only one enemy who was approaching her. He swung on the girl with his spear, but she lightly repelled the stroke with the exact movement of the sword. Now she has only to guess who would be the next, who would try to impress her. The monsters did not give up and continued to attack. The protagonist also did not retreat. He fought with each of them, primarily aiming at what he had a deer head. Having gone by the monster from behind, he managed to hit the enemy's feet exactly. The monster screamed and fell to the ground, giving a chance to take a chance. His accurate blow broke his head. The girl praised him for a great battle, and the main character in response thought the same thing about her. She warned him to prepare, because new enemies quickly approached them. This time it was a lot with sharp thorns in front. The girl said it was a magician of a completely different level. At this point, the monster, who stood on the top of the cart, began to pronounce some mysterious spells. As soon as he completed, a powerful explosion came, and the man fell to the ground, releasing a rifle. One of the monsters hit the gong again, after which all the monsters came into motion. They changed their tactics. They organized protection around the magician and placed between the shields of the crossbows from which the opponents attacked. Taiga apologized for letting his weapon. The girl noted that when the sorcerer is defeated, others would escape themselves. She asked if he could return the weapon. Taiga replied that if she was able to distract the enemy, then she would succeed. After that, they decided to act together. She reported that she would move to him along the cliff. She promised to give a sign as soon as she could. He agreed to follow her instructions, watching everything. The main character thought it was real magic. He did not know how to deal with such force. The attacks were like a game. It was then that his gaze stopped at the Manga staff. Several spheres suddenly appeared in the air above them. The girl explained that these are explosive stars and warned it was necessary to run away from them immediately. From a powerful explosion, everything around began to collapse. The protagonist wondered, and the girl wondered if everything was fine with him. He replied that everything was well with him and asked how she felt. The girl sighed and said that she almost fell from the cliff. She noted that this magician was a lot of trouble. He even was able to use prohibited magic. The man asked her if she could at least weaken the morale of their opponents at least. She replied that she could, and wondered if he had some idea. He in turn said he wanted to check something. Meanwhile, the monster remained alert and maintained defense. The protagonist showed her a jar with balls inside. She asked what it was. It seemed to her that it was candy and they looked very funny. The girl did not understand what he conceived but still agreed. They rushed in different directions, skillfully avoiding shots. Taiga reported that she began to move and trusts her completely. She replied that this time she would turn his attention properly. In fact, the girl could run even on the walls. She ran closer to them and screamed that they were only pathetic cowards. All their forces went only to defense. The magician tried to attack her, but she skillfully evaded and exclaimed that if they were standing still, she would not win. The protagonist thought that this lizard looks truly creepy. Who could imagine that such a monster can be found in this place? And no one would like to see it at night in a closed room, even in the worst dream. But he will prove both magic and a lizard, how powerful his knowledge of the other world is. In military training books, he read about explosives. If you mix sugar with nitric acid, you can cause a real explosion. The main component of gunpowder is nitric acid. There is little here, but if you mix everything right, the necessary substance should come out. He shouted loudly, ordering to hide. After that, he threw a pot with fire towards shelter. Everyone rushed to run away from surprise. The girl was hanging from the ceiling, enthusiastically exclaiming that it was incredible. Without any hesitation, she rushed to an attack on the magician. Her lizard opened her mouth wide, ready to strike. However, the girl missed, and this gave the magician the opportunity to jerk away. He did not waste his time and had already begun to wake up a new spell. The girl tensed, getting ready to meet the next attack. She had time to deviate from the beam but immediately waved her sword. Her blow reached the goal. The enemy was destroyed. The wizard's gaze gradually dimmed, and the monsters noticed it. They rushed to the side without looking back. The protagonist calmly approached the girl, introduced himself, and sincerely thanked her for the salvation. The girl laughed and assured that it was a little thing, and she was really fun. She winked the boy, and the lizard looked closely at her husband. She added that they seemed to have a nest in the ravine and suggested that she put together there. He apologized and explained that he first wanted to find out if his kingdom was all right. The guy also wanted to thank her properly, so he invited the girl to visit. But she just laughed and said that he did not worry about it. However, it was at this moment that the lizard noticed something. The man immediately asked what had happened. The girl also did not hide curiosity. What they saw forced them to get well. In front of them put a giant monster jumped in a variety of armor, decorated with sharp spikes. Behind his back gathered a whole army of monsters, armed with spears, swords, axes, and other weapons. They realized that there was none other than a giant champion, and he looked directly at them. Atoria wondered how the protagonist managed to make such a dangerous enemy. The man considered himself too naive. They were completely different with her, not like trances and manicores. He promised to return to the kingdom and tell everyone what happened. If she did not deny, she agreed with him and promised that she would definitely come. After all, this trip was precisely to meet the face of face-to-face. He began to tell her about the kingdom, but the girl stopped him, they say. He would better share these stories on the road. She turned to a lizard asking if she would allow her husband to settle for herself. At this moment, the main character finally realized that it was not a simple clash for a long time. They were in a real war against demons.